Welcome back, everyone. My name is Steven Rodriguez. I'm your true champion, and as you can tell, I am not alone today. I am joined with three very special Cardfight Vanguard content creators, and we're going to be doing something pretty cool to help ring in the new era of Vanguard. And those two creators I have with me are Eric from Vanguard Insider.
Hello.
We also have Chris from DifferentFight that I'm sure you guys will recognize.
Hello, hello, hello.
And we also have a very special guest, first time ever working with this gentleman. I'm very excited to see what happens. We have Solemn from Solemn Vanguard and Solemn Yu-Gi-Oh! At the same time.
What's up?
Welcome.
Solemn.
The double Solemn. He gets the double intro for sure. Thank you guys so much again for joining us today. If you guys aren't already aware of what we're doing today, basically we're going to be going through all of the past sets of Cardfight Vanguard, 10 years worth of product basically, and we're going to be ranking them in what I will be calling the undisputed best tier list for Cardfight Vanguard sets, because we have four very dedicated minds to Cardfight Vanguard to try and discuss all of these things. So what do you say we go ahead and get started with that? All right, boys and girls, here we are in the actual tier list itself. Now, if it wasn't clear to you in the intro, basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking the core booster sets from Cardfight Vanguard's past 10 years and ranking them against each other. It's going to be so much fun. And we're going to be starting off with booster set 1 and ending with VBT 12. And at the end of it, we will have the undisputed best product tier list for Cardfight Vanguard. And the way we're going to kind of do this is in two ways. Firstly, how we're going to rate these sets is in relation to each other. So while one set may have been like truly meta defining when it came out, we're not going to be rating it when it came out. We're going to be rating it in comparison to what other things are. So basically, if there's 2 or 3 meta defining things, they'll be placed in like the S tier probably, but within that tier, there might be some discrepancies as to where each one goes. And then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to go one at a time, because there's 4 people here. And if we just spend a whole like hour or 2 hours just yelling at each other about how awesome certain sets are, we'll never get anything done. So we're gonna go one at a time. We'll add things if we need to, and it should be a grand old time. We're gonna go in the order that you see. We're gonna go me, and then Solemn, and then Chris, and then Eric, and it should be pretty fun. I am very excited. How about you guys?
I'm high.
Yeah, it should be good. Should be good.
Awesome. I'm really looking forward to just talking about these sets, because I don't know about you guys, but ever since Vanguard Zero came out, I've been in love with just looking back at old school Vanguard and talking about it as much as possible, because I'm like, oh man, remember how cool that was when I started playing this game? And now every day I'm always like, don't break the game every single day. And as you guys know, we have the brand new overdress that recently got announced, which gets everyone super excited for Cardfight Vanguard. And I think this will be a nice way to sort of not necessarily wrap up the past 10 years, but be a nice lead into our future, because we can appreciate our past, which is super cool.
Also kind of celebrate the last 10 years as well.
Exactly. Like, yeah. We're not ending off the 10 years, because that's not our job, but we are definitely celebrating it and ringing in the new future in, I think, a positive way, which is nice.
Yeah, like at the time of recording, we don't have that much information, but I think, you know, even with the little information we've been given, which is already a fair bit, I think it's a lot of things to get excited for, and especially like for the potential growth of the game, especially, I think.
Oh yeah, overdress definitely feels like the kind of thing that they've been waiting to bring out for us, and they're just like kind of giving to us like a lot first, but then once we get everything, it'll be like, oh, this is like the craziest thing we've ever seen, I think, is what it kind of feels like. It's like it's a completely different direction that Vanguard's ever gone in, I think.
100%. And also the project name, Vanguard 2.0, makes a lot more sense right now.
Yeah.
100%. But let's get back to Vanguard 1.0, and what better way to start off than with the very first set, Descent of the King of Knights, I believe this set is called. Don't yell at me if it's not. And this will be my set, and I think, so we got, you know, SP Prince of Blaster Blade, Dragonic Overlord. That's cool from a collector standpoint. We got the birth of actual Vanguard clans. We got Oracle Think Tank, Nova Grappler with actual support. And then we got like Spikes, Mega Colony. I think Nubatama came out in this set for the first time, which is crazy to think about. And Granblue did too, right? Yeah. We got
Right,
those boys.
yeah.
So
Nubatama had like 1 or 2 cards.
like literally, yeah. Like, so basically everything that wasn't the core 4 just got like 4 cards. Maybe didn't even wait, didn't Dark Irregulars come out too? I don't think so. I think it was set 2. No, they did come out? Okay, cool. So yeah, like this set was amazing because it was the birth of Vanguard, but it's also crap because anything that came out wasn't really playable unless you wanted to mix your cards, and even then your cards were like rare or lower or a Juggernaut maximum that couldn't do anything. So I'm hesitant to put this thing any higher than B, and I think putting it in B is nice because as of right now, this is the only set we have to go off of, like what's an average set. What do you guys think?
I tend to kind of agree, but I also think it's important to realize like the iconic value this had for Vanguard as a brand.
Mhm.
Like your Blaster Blade, your Draconic Overlord, your Bargal, like all of those cards had so much impact on Vanguard, especially for people who like got into it. Even now, like even all true V, Blaster Blade and Draconic Overlord have been like these strong elements. And so kind of like in Yu-Gi-Oh, where you have your Blue Eyes and your Dark Magician, I would personally put it slightly higher just because of that impact. But I do agree that from a game perspective, obviously, it's a very, very young set. And so it's not perfect in any way.
Right, and like what I would add to that is like this was the first that ever gave Blaster Blade and Overlord like a higher rarity printing in SP and also triple rare. So maybe you can think of it as like, oh, this was like their way of appreciating those cards even more right off the bat. And so like from a collector standpoint, in a sense, it's kind of cool, but it's not necessarily, you know, valuable, but it's just like sentimental and really powerful for the overall community. So I do like that as a good way to kind of buff it up. We'll call it at least A tier, right?
Sounds good to me.
And if
I agree with A tier as well,
Yeah.
purely because it's like the also the sort of it was the first time that this kind of card game ever came to be. Like the most similar thing to the like Vanguard's mechanics was Vice, which came out 3 years before Vanguard, and you know that's still Bushiroad's IP. But at the same time, like it was like the game that challenged Yu-Gi-Oh, let's say, in the actual card game market and like lived to tell the tale, basically, right? You know, this was like Vanguard for a long time was considered to be one of the top TCGs, and you know, this was the set that started it. But at the same time, there was quite a few things that, looking back, it's like they reprinted trial deck cards, like Gallatin was in there, Marin was in there.
Yeah.
You know, they like some of the rares were just like cards that like, you know, gained plus 5k when you drive check a grade 3 or whatever on Vanguard Circle. You know, it had a lot of dud cards and like reprinting a lot of trial deck cards as commons and a lot of those things. Like that was a design choice that they kept for a while as well. So it really felt like there was some weird choices about it. Starter like cards, you know, the Forerunners being triple rare was also weird with like, you know, Barkle and Conroe. And, you know, in the grand scheme of things, it was pretty poorly designed, but purely for that like kind of impact of creating the game, I think it does deserve A tier.
Yeah, and like I think we're gonna be trouble with like these really old ones of like thinking like in hindsight it was a bad set. We shouldn't think like that. We should think, oh, here's what it was like when it came out and how cool it was then related to how cool these newer things are now is how I think we need to think about it. And that was a really good job of isolating those two things. It's like hindsight, it was a poorly designed set, but in reality, when it came out, it was like everything to us because it was all we had, and it was like the start of everything that we love, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right, moving on to Onslaught of Dragon Souls, set 2. This is Solemn's.
So set 2 introduced, well, obviously more Royal Paladin, more Kagero, more Oracle, more Novas, but we also had some Tachi, Mega Colony Spikes, and Grand Blue. This was actually the first set to where Grand Blue got some triple Rs as well. We had our Spirit Exceed, our Ruin Shade, which was like relevant for the longest time. Spikes got Skydiver, Soul Saver. So
don't forget about Baskirk.
Was Baskirk in here already?
Yeah, Baskirk was in here, bro. The Mega Blast.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. So I think this set had more going for it from like a game design perspective, but not necessarily from a iconic perspective. So I don't know. Because it's Grand Blue, I want to put it in A as well, but maybe others don't agree. So I'll leave you to that.
Okay. Where would you put it if it was just your decision?
If it's just my decision, I put it straight into A.
Okay. I'll start it there.
I want to add another thing to this set too, is that I spent a little bit of time like a few years ago researching the early meta of the game, and this was the set where the first kind of like true tier 1, like if not tier 0 deck was born, which was Soul Saver. So like the Soul Saver engine was like, so I mean, in modern day terms, consistent doesn't really work, but to the game's current standard back then, it was the most consistent deck. Like you could search out grade 3s, you could like Superior Red Blaster Blade, so you always secured your grade 2. So it's like it was consistent for that sake, and the win con of Soul Saver was actually like the best win con that the game had, and that was basically also the reason why, like one of the big reasons why Barkle got banned as a starter was purely for that deck as well. And so I feel like that was already a kind of a sign of game balance kind of going out the window a little bit. So that kind of makes me want to put it down to B tier, purely because this was like like that was the deck that everybody basically either played or had to beat, and there weren't that many decks that could really beat it back then either.
Yeah, like when you're looking at the design of a game, if in set 2 there's a deck that's so good, you need to like restrict a part of it to make it more balanced. You know, that's a sign of like maybe this was a mistake to print these cards like so close to each other. I don't think.
Yeah, like imagine that happened in Digimon. You know, in set 2 there's already like the best deck.
I would have like, oh, we're already banning things. That's not good. So yeah, I definitely can understand like the overall power creep that this set actually created so right away for Royal Paladin and Kagero specifically. Because it was the, like while it was the first set to give us like more deep support for other things, it also just continued the support of our core 2 things that were already existing, and it did one like too much, and it became a problem. So I definitely agree that that's a downside to it, and I would agree with putting it in B for sure.
Yeah. I have the same aspect of a different fight set. Like, this set has the same flaws as set 1, that the overall support is kind of screwed over all the clans. Like, there's no real good dedicated support. But the interesting thing what this set brought, what I didn't really feel set 1, is that they actually start to make win conditions and actual game plans with the Soul Saver engine. Silent Tom was a win condition for Oracle Think Tank. So
this is when Silent Tom came out. You're right. Oh my god.
Yeah. So it's actually where the game started to go towards a certain direction, which is a fundamental core of the game. And there are also really good staples in this set that we see for years to come, like Mecha Trainer, Chappie the Ghosty, Dancing Cutlass was also used by some Grand Blue players for a long time. So there are some good things, there are some bad things, but I think because of the negative things, that I think B tier is where I think this set should reside. Because it doesn't have the nostalgia factor what set 1 has with Blaster Blade and Overlord and the whole Vanguard is here.
You know, that's so
Without
true.
my Grand Blue bias, I would.
Speaking of nostalgia, really quick, fun story about set 2. This is actually the first set that I ever bought a pack for, and the pack was a Silent Tom. I totally forgot about that. And then everyone in the shop was like, Silent Tom. They ran to me and they're like, what do you want? I was like, I don't know, Kagero stuff. And they're like, Blazing Flares? I'm like, oh, like how many? Like, where's a playset? I'm like, okay. I was like 14 years old. I was like, yes, let's do this. And that was like definitely a big moment for me. It was like, oh, I'm lucky in pulling in this game. Let's go. But yes, B tier, I totally agree. Makes sense. Moving on to set 3, Demonic Lord Invasion is the name of this one?
Yeah, Demonic Lord Invasion.
Yeah. And this is Chris's.
All right. So Demonic Lord Invasion was weird in English because this came out really, like, we basically got set 1, 2, then 6, then Extra Booster 3 before Extra Booster 1 or 2, and then we got set 3 after some delays. And set 3 overall, like, there were already fans for Pale Moon and Dark Irregulars, like, just from the actual anime itself. And that kind of already, like, you know, had some people's hype, but overall it wasn't that hyped. This was also like right after the Bark goal restriction that people had to look at like a new starter for Royals. So the set itself wasn't too impactful. Of course, like, you know, there's really iconic cards like Alice was in here, Amon was in here, Dayusha was printed. There was like 3 DP cards before DP was actually playable clan.
Yeah, set 4 was when all the DP cards came out for the first wave.
Yeah, that's where like Enigma and Laurel and stuff came out. But set 3 was the one that, you know, they kind of showed us DP for the first time. So like my bias kind of shows there. But for all intents and purposes, I would put it in tier B, if not C, because it really wasn't that impactful. Although no, there was one very impactful part, Tsukiyomi. That's right.
Tsukiyomi came out in here, and that was like Oracle Think Tank's best deck until Coco actually got support. Coco actually came out
until it got banned, and then Coco was the only deck you could play.
Right. But then we got Cookie, and then that was when Coco became the better version, I think.
Yeah, and also like keep in mind that Tsukiyomi was a deck that was still one of the best decks throughout all of Limit Break. So maybe we could even put it in A. It's such a mixed bag because some of it is kind of whatever, but then Tsukiyomi is just ridiculously good. So
I think I think if we like take the foundation of Dark Irregulars, Pale Moon, and then we just top it off with like, oh yeah, Tsukiyomi's in here. That's like such a big thing for so many people because so many people got to actually play Oracle Think Tank to the point where they got to appreciate. Like I have a friend who only ever played Oracle Think Tank for like the past 9 years, and he remembers Tsukiyomi as like, oh, this was the deck that made me enjoy playing Vanguard, and also just actually good at it too. So I think like that with like the foundation it's set for D-Police, Pale Moon, and Dark Irregulars is actually a big selling point for this set.
Yep.
I would agree that this should be an A tier deck. Just because the fact that where set 2 introduces the potential win conditions now in the game, like Tsukiyomi, her playstyle is so unique that we hardly see that actually in Vanguard. Like you play the game in such a different way with the whole stack thing, and it actually shows people that they can, I have big brain and I can go into this. But besides that, the unique cards, like, here's my bias, Steel Vampire is probably best card ever made for Vanguard, in my opinion. I stand by that choice.
It was definitely a hype moment in the anime, that's for sure. I think we should think about is like the reason why our hype for it was so low in English was because we had the messed up order. Like we already had Limit Break, so like when this stuff came out, you're like, this is not going to be better than that. But if you look at it in the context of like, oh, if we went in proper order here of like set 1, 2, 3, I think an extra booster came out as well.
Yeah, it was
maybe.
a lot more impactful.
And then I think even at one point, like SP Tsukiyomi was like one of the most expensive cards in the game because of how hard it was to actually get. Because I believe SPs back then were way more rare than they are nowadays. And so like from a value standpoint, from a popularity standpoint, I feel like it's actually a really impactful set if you look at it in the context of how it was meant to be released versus how we experienced it. Yep, so I think A tier is probably a good place to put this if we're going to put like set 1 in A tier.
Yeah. I agree with A tier.
Okay. And then moving on to set 4, I don't even know the name of this, like Illusionary Dragon Souls. Who knows?
This is Eclipse of Illusionary Shadows.
I was like that close, okay? I said illusion, didn't I? That's the big one. Yeah.
And that name already tells us what this set is all about because this is Shadow Paladin, baby. Oh yeah, look at the smile on Solemn Vanguard's face.
I love it. I think this is straight S material, but I'll let you go first.
This is also S for me, but I'll talk about it later.
Right. I'll talk about it later.
I'm going to tell you guys, everybody probably already knows this. My knowledge about the old era of Vanguard is very limited because I started playing in mid-G. But from what I've known and heard is that even though Shadow Paladin right at the gate wasn't really strong and wasn't really playable, the fact that they introduced a clan like this, and it's one of fan favorites of everybody, like it's the most expensive clan most of the time, is really important. But I see another thing in this set, which has to be top tier, is that it's the introduction of not only Commander Laurel, but also Blouse. Like Blouse is in this set.
Blau Kluger, my Nova boys.
So I would say at least that this should be at least A tier. What with the impact that all the cards have in this set. Like we see a lot of good stuff for Dimension Police, Blouse in it, and of course the birth of Shadows, which is probably one of the most popular clan in Vanguard, should I say?
There's a lot of fan favorites in this set. I think there's other things too, like Pale Moon got more support in it. I think I can't remember what else. Oh, I think
Ember
it was
Dragons.
Ember Dragons, yeah. Didn't Garmor come out in this, or was he, or was he in an extra booster?
Garmor was the set.
Yeah, Garmor was the set, which wasn't cool for people, but it came out, which is cool. The thing. I agree that the hype of Shadows and Deep Police actually getting support is amazing, but like the heartbreak that Shadows wasn't great was not fun for me because I remember like, oh, I can build Shadows, but I was like, oh wait, all my friends are telling me don't do it, so I was like, okay, I'll build Enigma instead. It's also bad, but it's way cheaper. And that was the first DB deck I ever built was Enigmans, and I fell in love with that deck actually. I played like 8 stands and like I had like Enigman Reigns and Storm. It was so fun, but It definitely is one of those sets where like you think back to it, you're like, I was so excited for this, but then when it came out, you were a bit disappointed because the things you liked weren't that great. But that's like the cool thing about Vanguard is like my things don't need to be great for me to appreciate them in terms of the actual meta, but they are still things that over time might become stupid. So if I have faith and I just play the deck because I like it, maybe I'll be rewarded for that later on with other things that come out. Like for example, set 12, which we'll talk about later.
So the way I see it though is that Shadow Paladin is so crucial for like this edge boy kind of fan base that Vanguard does have that I don't know, it can be understated. Especially like Blaster Dark is such a fan favorite, right up there with Blade and Overlord. And like the fact that Blaster Dark SP is in here, I don't know. I think that's pretty crucial. I think if you look at this set and you compare it to another game, I would dare to compare it to something like Invasion of Chaos, where you had Chaos Emperor, Dragon, and so forth. Like this is literally Edge Boy incarnate, and I don't think you can get around that. Ren is the fan favorite daddy, and I would put it as purely for that. But
ever,
I'm also a Shadow Paladin stan as well. But I was like, this set might not be the best one to be like, oh, Shadow Paladins, but this is the first one, so we gotta. It's S tier for sure. S for Shadow Paladins, of course.
There's more room in S for more Shadow Paladins.
Exactly. I should have realized. Why not make them all S? Duh. Speaking of S, I think we got an S candidate right here in set 5 with Awakening of Twin Blades. This was the first time we got a brand new mechanic introduced into the game called Cross Ride. Some fan favorite units for the rest of time. Draconic Overlord at the end, my personal favorite. MLB, Majestic Lord Blaster, and of course PBO, a better boss unit than PBD, but still not amazing. And then we got a bunch of other stuff too, like we got Oracle Think Tank stuff in here, didn't we? Or no? Oh, that was set 9. What else came out in here besides those 3 dudes?
There was a little bit. There was a little bit of OTC.
There was?
There was
Okay.
the Aureole, the bind shooter. You know.
Oh,
that was
yes, thank you. Yeah. You're Riley. Yeah. And then I think that's pretty much it. Like the big 3 were Shadows, Royals, and Kagero for this. And being the first one introduced into mechanic, being the ending of the first arc of the original anime, you know, it was just, this is just an insane set, I think, in terms of power, meta, and just the future of the game, because everything from like this point onwards was like, oh yeah, this is Vanguard. It gets crazy. Get ready.
Mura and Neo was also in this. Like
Murakumo, thank you. I thought Murakumo was set 6.
Yeah, right.
Or
No, it was this one.
It was this one? Oh, okay. So like Mandalore and stuff came out in here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah. For me, this one is also like an instant S and like above set 4 levels of S.
Right,
because
yeah.
This was the most game-changing set
Yeah.
for a long time. Like,
Mhm.
I'm looking at everything else that followed it, and there was nothing as game-changing for quite a few sets, I would say. Like, these decks were better than everything in Limit Break. These decks were the most popular. It was some of the most iconic units, the most iconic anime moments too.
Yep.
Like
Yep.
people still go back and rewatch those moments from the anime where like the end first appears, MLB
Yep.
first appears, PBO first appears. You know, those it really was kind of like the climax of the first sort of season of Vanguard. And like for a lot of people, this is like when they think of Vanguard, they even remember this specific set of like MLB, DOT, and PBO. So I think for that reason, it really is, it deserves one of the top spots. And, you know, it's also like a lot of people's attachment. Like the end has come back so many times, you know, and like the end also started this whole path of like overlords like getting new forms and stuff.
Right.
Whereas other boss units didn't really as much.
Not nearly as many.
Yeah. So for me, it's a huge S.
Mm-hmm. And a thing you mentioned that I want to just touch on a bit more was like we had an English Limit Break before we had Cross Ride.
Yeah.
And we still played Cross Ride over it because it was just infinitely better.
And partially for that reason, right? Because they knew that in Japan these decks were overpowering everything. So they're like, well, at least we can let these people enjoy Limit Break before we give them cross rides.
And then they stopped supporting it and they tried to like play it off all cool, like, oh no, in the show they don't exist anymore, so why would we make more support for them? But like that's like they used to be like, sorry, we made a mistake with set 5. Let's not give them support for a while.
400 IQ.
I was like, I didn't notice, and then I was like, wait a second, they're trying to play it off all cool here. They're trying to talk up their failure. All right, I see it. But you know, I don't think anyone's like top of S immediately. Agreed?
Probably top tier S tier for what we have right now, and probably for a long while we look at all this.
It's gonna be hard to find stuff that actually like is better than this, I think, which will be interesting. But we'll get to it when we get to it. Moving on to 6. Oh, don't tell me. Transcendence of Blade and Steel? No, that's
Breaker of Limits.
Oh my god, I was thinking of Cavalry of
story.
Black Steel for some reason, which is the Spectral Duke Dragon extra booster. I'm stilly.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fair.
So yeah, we have set 6. This is Solemn.
Right. So Breaker of Limits. Personally, when I saw the box art, I was like, I don't really care about this set. And then I looked what's in it, and I care about this set.
Oh
You have
yeah.
Nociel, Angel Feathers being like Battle Cupid Nociel has been played in Angel Feathers since it came out through like this era, Legion, G, Premium. You will never kill Nociel. Like the only thing you could do to kill Nociel is print a draw PG to replace it so that you're like forced into the choice.
It was so I remember I was like, oh my god, I can't play the grade 1 and the PG. What matters
Yeah.
more?
Like two of each, easy.
And then play the 30k
so
shield now. That's all we need.
And now, even more importantly for me, it also introduced Cocytus, and even more importantly for many other people, it introduced Blonde Ezel. Like, you have your
And
Vermilion,
Vermilion.
which a lot of Narukami players love. You have your Nova, Azure Dragon. Like, I think a lot of people want to see this thing high. If my own bias was, of course, speaking again, like the Grand Blue fanboy would put it in S, but I don't think it's quite iconic enough to put it there. But maybe Aiden if I get rid of my own bias.
So I'll put it in S for you, and then we'll see where it goes after that. So I really like how this set like introduced so many new things. Plus, the limit break mechanic got its first full set of support. One of my favorite mechanics because it allows a lot of interplay between your opponent because you can halt them from the limit break, you can play around them. It was kind of like a revolutionary set in terms of how you played the game because it introduced this core level of interaction on top of the already core interaction we had through guarding and retiring and stuff. And I thought it was like a pretty cool set for that regard.
Yeah, for me again, I'm gonna start talking about stories because this was this was a set when I found my locals. So I just like randomly Googled like Vanguard Luxembourg and then found a random shop in the city. And then when I came in, it was just after BTO6 released. And then like I was like, oh my god, Vanguard in my country, we have a card shop where I can play Vanguard. This is insane. Like my life has changed forever. And it actually did. Like I think by getting into local like finding a local community, which then led me to go to regionals, which led me to making videos, et cetera, and therefore I am here now. You know, like so for me, this set is so important because it was when I found my locals, and because I was such a huge Ren fanboy back then, and like we knew that he's playing golds and we're not getting shadows for a while. I was like, well, I need the gold pieces now before Duke comes out. So I was like, you know, buying packs for this set to get like the PGs and like the other staples like Nimue and stuff like not Nimue, the bow double rare
Vivian.
Vivian,
yeah.
So like stuff like that. And so I remember like I was opening my first packs of Vanguard ever with this set and things like that. So for me, this set is really, really also like it has a special place compared to a lot of the others. And also like I think Solemn would have loved this time because back then like Grand Blue was actually a really good deck because it was
cool.
It was, you know, compared to Kagero and Royals and like the two sets that preceded BTO6, like Grand Blue had not just like their BTO2 wave, but then instantly got their BTO6 wave, which gave them like so many tools that were so far ahead of like, you know, clans like Royals and Kagero.
Yeah.
And so it was pretty good time. I don't know, either like the highest of A tier or bottom of S tier maybe, but that's like my personal bias really shining through here.
I don't know what you mean by Grand Blue being good because like it's always best deck.
He's always lived in the time of Grand Blue's the best in his head, so he already knows what you're talking about. You're fine, man.
There is no other time.
There is no other time.
We're into our pendulum guy.
Oh God.
Pendulum.
Pendulum, cool.
Throws chair at wall.
No, breaks table with chair and then throws broken pieces at wall. Yeah. Okay. I think bottom of S is we can all agree on. If we get something that like maybe is truly better than it, we'll kick it out to top of A. But I think bottom of S makes the most sense. And a thing that Chris mentioned that I'm like, oh yeah, this has to be S is like this wasn't a meta defining set yet, because when Cavalry of Black Steel, a set that's not on here, came out with Spectral Duke Dragon, probably the most powerful card ever in terms of relations of Vanguard cards, was insane. You needed the cards from this set to make that deck work at all. So I definitely think that regard, like having key pieces that would be way better later on, is a big factor for it too. All right, moving on to Don't Tell Me, Rampage of the Beast King, set 7.
Yeah, that's the one.
I know this one because Great Nature's in this.
All right, so the thing with this set, and this is where the boomer trivia comes in, is essentially like this set was basically one of the worst selling sets in the game of all time especially at that time of the game. So because Great Nature, nobody really cared about it. Like Lukier was cool, but it like she had her own following and Pale Moon was popular in its own right, but the deck didn't get explored properly for like a good few months later. And then on top of that, like it had support for DI that, you know, like Reiji and stuff was cool. And then there was a few other things that, you know, people were kind of excited about it, you know, like other support for Angels and OTT and like Gold itself. But it sold so poorly because of like just the unpopularity of the clans in it. But then years down the line, it ended up being that so many cards in this set were staples, like such like must-have staples. Like I'm pretty sure Purple Trapezes came out in this set as well.
As
and,
a
you know,
rare.
cards like that. As a rare, yeah. And so, you know, cards like that are still staples in premium to this day came out from that set. Yeah. Like the Great Nature staples, like so many things in this set were just, you know, they were must-haves for those clans that then in retrospect, people were like trying to find anywhere that this set was still like being sold in. And I remember there was a moment where like people were finding it in their locals that like, still wasn't like purchased. But then a lot of the cards in this set became super expensive over time because there was just so little product opened. So there was so little like, you know, supply for the demand for those clans later on, especially when like Lukia Reverse came out. Lukias were like, I don't know, like 30, 40 bucks a piece. And like when she came out, she was like 7.5. Like I bought the deck and I remember like I think paid like $5 for a Lukia. Like it was really, really cheap back then. And it just went, I remember when Lukia Reverse came out, this like everything in this set just went up like insane. It's like when it came out, it was like a D tier set, but over time it became at least a B, I would say.
For sure. One quick thing I want to add to this is like I had like the complete Stonks play. I fell in love with this set when it first came out, and I had a friend that bought a case of it. And I said, "What SPs do you have extras of that you don't want?" And he said, "Lukias." I was like, "Can I have a playset of Lukias? That's the one Pale Moon deck I always wanted to build."
Stonks.
And then here's what happened. I ended up not being able to build the deck because of things with like my car and stuff. And so I just like had 4 SPs, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll just keep these for the collection. And then like I think like 4 or 5 months later, they became $75 a piece. I paid probably $10 for these SPs. And I was like, let's go, baby. I'm going to pay for my Revengers deck with these. It was so stupid. Yeah. But yeah, so I completely agree. Like this set evolved over time. It didn't, when it came out, it was lame. But in hindsight, it was one of the coolest sets ever for people to make their future decks actually playable and to kind of be like, oh, I want to play a not main core 4 deck. This is one of them you can play. Go get those cards. So I think it doesn't deserve like an S tier or an A tier in hindsight, but it could be at least top of B for sure.
Yeah.
Boomer me right here. It also has Yellow Bolt.
Oh, I forgot about Yellow. Oh, it also has
Worlds. So that's the point.
Yellow Bolt. Oh my God, the value. Once you get 2 in play, that's your deck done. Reiji comes out in this too, right? Yeah, insane. So yeah, I'm gonna put it in top of B. I think is probably the
top of B. I think is a good place. I still remember watching like videos. There's so many videos back then of like just people opening packs. Like, and I used to love watching like Vanguard pack opening videos. And I remember there was like a BTO6 one where like a dude pulls a Vermilion, starts doing backflips. Like there was one where I was watching BTO7 one of like a bunch of kids. I think like it was just a bunch of kids in the playground and like filming with their phone opening BTO7 packs. Like they pull an Overlord and just like imagine like 6-year-old just like screaming like the most obscene swear words, you know, upon pulling a Leopold. Like I have like random pack opening video memories from these days as well.
I love that. Like I think B is gonna be like for like where the average set goes, but even the average set has so many fun memories for so many people. So I really like that. Yeah. Like even though these sets are kind of lower compared to everything else, there's so many good things about them. Especially when you look at like what they did for people when they came out. So love that. Moving on to Blue Storm Armada. I know this one very well. Set 8. We're going to Eric for this one, I think.
Okay, so we had different fight story time. Now it's finally my story time.
Oh yeah, no! Oh my God, I totally. This was not planned, but go ahead, bud.
Yeah, this is actually what happened that I experienced because this is the very first set that I personally opened. And you might ask yourself, why did I open this set? Because I started mid-Jira. Well, I wanted to play Aquaforce, and I knew jack shit about the game, so I didn't know that these cards were outdated. I saw Maelstrom, and I thought, oh, this looks cool. I want to build him. So I bought a box of this set. I believe even 2 boxes. And what happened? I pulled SPs of the freaking Dayusha and all the trip bars of Dayusha, and I didn't want to build Dimension Police.
Those are good pulls, though.
Those are great pulls, especially in G-Era, bro. The Ultimate Dayusha.
It was really great pulls, but I didn't know that because I didn't even know what strides were and how they worked.
Oh my God. So funny.
But personally, I have some attachments to this set because I'm a really Maelstrom fanboy, and this was where Maelstrom was born. Also, the birth of Aquaforce was here, so maybe Solemn has something with this set, with Aquaforce. Dimension Police, I mean, great Dayusha, so DifferentFight is also very excited about this one. But I'm not too familiar with what type of impact this set actually had in the format. It also has Zeal, which is basically the best deck now in Standard because
that double take was. I felt that one, Chris. I felt that one.
Damn, you got COVID, man.
Worse than Zeal.
Psychic Gray came out. Oh no.
But there's also another thing that this set brought, and that's the Church of Dungaree. So that's also a thing.
I love Dungaree.
My personal experience, I think it would be at least a B tier, but I can say something really weird with the fact that maybe this was a meta dead deck that it didn't really bring anything. So probably different fight. Maybe you, Steven, maybe Solemn knows more about the Aquaforce part. You could probably say that if B tier is good or it's completely off on this one.
Right. I'll place it in B for now. So I think thing that I kind of want to add is Aquaforce, while it may not have been like the craziest deck out of the box, come set 9 time, it became one of the most expensive decks to build because like I think like half of the main cards you needed were all triple rare and higher because of like Basil, Maelstrom. Was Diamondis was a rare, I think, and then there was the PGs. This was the first time we haven't talked about how PGs were like the most expensive thing of every set ever, but that's just because of given for all these old things. PGs. But I think Aquaforce had one of the most expensive ones in Pascal because I just think he was pulled less than the other ones. So I forget the reasoning for that exactly, but he was a very expensive one.
Assault was the most expensive rare even.
Did that come out in this set?
Didn't come out until BT13.
Yeah, BT13 was a Talon, but he was a very expensive rare. He was like, what, like at some point, like $10, I think, for him.
I remember I sold a few actually back then.
So in terms of value, in terms of like relative to like the history, this was actually a pretty expensive set. And like you said, you pulled SP Dayusha, that became value over time. When it first came out, probably wasn't that super hype, but it was definitely a big deal later on. So I think for that reason alone, it gets a guaranteed B in my book, especially being the birth of Aquaforce, one of the most dedicated clans for some people all over the world. So it's got to be a fan favorite for sure.
Shout outs to Wang Zi, man. But I think BT08 for me was also, I remember this set was pretty cool because Musketeers came out, so Neo Nectar became like semi-competitive for the first time. DP, like, it was funny because the anime aired the Great Dayusha moment like ages before this set even came out in Japanese. I think it was like a while before. So like we saw this like amazing moment that like people rewatched like 50 times on the day that it aired, and then they were like, so when are these cards coming out? I was like, oh, you know.
You're telling me.
And then like we had the long wait. Maelstrom, like I remember Aquaforce was really hyped. Like people saw layout and they were like, oh my god, this new character. He looks like Jack Atlas from like Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds as a kid or something, you know. People were like making all kinds of theories and stuff. So it was a very popular set in terms of kind of like BT06, I guess, in terms of popularity, but it wasn't too revolutionary. Like it felt in line with the way that they were supporting the game with those sets of that era. So it wasn't super revolutionary, but maybe bottom of A tier is where I would put it, simply because it's kind of, you know, it was actually quite important, and it still had that kind of uniqueness. Like people still consider like Maelstrom as one of like Aquaforce's faces. You know, it's either Maelstrom or Tavas for most people.
Right. So I definitely think bottom of A tier is probably the best place we can probably put this in relation to everything else we've placed on this list. Because like you said, there may not have been the most amazing things off the bat, but if we look at it over time in comparison to everything else, what this did for the game deserves to be put in A tier, I think. But I think bottom...
A tier is like our nostalgia corner. We have like the first set, we have Tsukiyomi, and then we have Maelstrom.
Like literally, like because nostalgia is such an important factor because, you know, the way you feel about your clan and the way you kind of want to like motivate yourself to keep playing the game, you need those favorite things to keep you going for a long time. But that'll soon be going away soon, thanks to overdress. But we'll talk more about that in future videos, I'm sure.
Thank God.
I mean, you're going to eat those words in a moment when we're going to talk about the V series with all the nostalgia.
Right. Well, I'm saying nostalgia is not necessarily a good thing. I'm just saying it's an important factor for this community. I'm not saying if it's good or bad. I'm just saying it matters to people. So moving on to set 9, this is mine. Don't tell me. I don't even know. It doesn't matter. Maelstrom, Vermilion the Blood, and Platinum Azul came out in this. Also, my favorite card.
Knights and Dragons.
Oh, thank you. My favorite card in this set is Polaris, because that was that's a super awesome card. And later on, when we get Chat Noir, that was my card to mix with it for sure. But in terms of like end of arc sets, correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like this was like one of the least impactful in terms of like the actual game, and then in terms of like what people cared about. Like we had the Gold Paladin stance, but by this point when this released, we already had Spectral Duke Dragon, and so I don't think people truly thought it was better than Platinum Azul was actually better than that, so they just didn't play it, or maybe they threw in Chrome Jailers because they could, but I don't think it actually mattered for the best meta decks at the time. The Blood was a really nice way to cap off the Narukami deck of that year. It was actually a pretty big runner for a long time. You would mix it with like cards like Tejas and stuff, and you would have like ways to like kill starters and front row and back row. It was really cool actually, but overall I think it was just kind of a mixed bag of just stuff that they wanted to end off Limit Break with. I think thematically it's a cool set, end of Limit Break, birth of Ultimate Break, all that fun stuff. But yeah, I don't think it's actually the biggest thing. I kind of want to put it as our first C tier deck. Weirdly enough.
I want to agree, actually. I want to agree. Because I remember in the community back then, this was also kind of like people were looking at this as like, oh, this is going to be as big as BTO5. Like, it's going to change the game forever. And then it just kind of like fell over and like flopped around and didn't do much. Like the most relevant card from this was Glory, because it was like the first time we got like, you know, for the duration of the game, we refer to Glory type skills as just Glory skills, right? You know, that kind of Garter Strike was just called, oh, that's a Glory skill, you know? So like that's like the most impactful thing. People were disappointed by the Blood. People were disappointed by Platinum Azel, especially, I remember. And then like I remember, oh my god, Chrome Jailer. Everybody was like, it's finally a cross ride for Spectral Duke. It's like they're doing cross rides for everything. Of course, Spectral Duke's gonna get a cross ride. Chrome Jailer is just a random card.
It's
like
a random card with a Persona Blast.
Yeah, like this was a lot of people's a lot of disappointment was like this set's kind of attachment for a lot of people, I think. So I kind of agree with C, to be honest.
Yeah, it's also important to note, like, we've been pushing everything into S and A, and sometimes we need to add.
We gotta be real here sometimes about, especially like with the like he was saying, compared to BT5, this is garbage compared to BT5. So I gotta say C for this. And even I think we could say D. I don't think it was trash, the set. I just think it was like meh. Like if C is
D for the V series set.
oh, don't worry.
I want to put the Luard set in D, bro.
We got some hot takes coming up. Don't you worry. We'll be ready. I got some stonks for this too. Don't worry. But I think C is safe. I think C makes sense. But if we come back, I might put it lower. I could be convinced to put it lower. Let's move on to, personally, I don't know if you guys can agree with this, my favorite era of Vanguard, Break Ride. We're going to be talking, or Limit Break, but Break Ride. We're going to start off with 10, Triumphant Return of the King of Knights. I know this one. That's easy. all the KOK sets are easy. This is Solemn.
So this is, speaking of D sets, I personally like find this set super boring. The only thing it has going for it, in my opinion, is Jewel Knight Ashley, and like that archetype. There's a lot of people who like Ashley, or well, Jewel Knights in general. But beyond that, okay, it introduces Genesis, but that's like very niche. There's like not a lot of people who love it, but some people love it a lot, like Mohammed. But I don't know, like it has another Alfred for goals. It has Gauntlet Buster, I guess.
SP Blaster Blade Liberator, I think, came out in this. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I guess.
It feels just like a lot of rehashing from old things. And I don't know, maybe it's just me. I'm
holding everything in. I'm holding everything in.
No, guys, let it out. This is honesty time. This is a safe space. You're fine.
Kind of bores me right now. So maybe you can add some interesting points
I'm
there.
in between these two guys.
So okay. One good thing about this set that I think is a pretty good thing, that I think it still stays in D tier, like Solemn said. I think D is fair at this point, but the two things I love
Chris
about
is
this.
fuming.
For real?
You can go last, Chris. I go first.
The thing that's for me is the only thing that might be awesome and truly amazing about this set is the birth of Eradicators, one of the, if not most famous Narukami archetypes of all time. And it was the first time I ever started playing Narukami, personally, was with this set. And it was the first deck I ever got a first place finish with. So, you know, sentimentality is a key thing for me with this one, and that's awesome. But it's also just this idea of like, yeah, the set as a whole was pretty weird, especially in English times, because we had set 11 first and set 10.
Yes.
But we were like, so, well, like, I have a weird relationship with this set, because like, sure, in like, when you look at it, like on the whole, wasn't the most impactful thing ever. Set 11 was way more impactful. We'll talk about that one in a second. But we wanted set 10 first because it was the better Eradicator support versus just Steve. So it was one of those things of like, we became anticipatory for set 10 more so than set 11 because we got set 11 first versus this one first. So I think I will just personally like this one more than set 11 in terms of what I wanted. But set 11, when we get to it, is a pretty crazy set.
Okay, so for Chris can I want to add on what Solemn said. Like, I can definitely see the D tier from this set, because if you look at the triple Rs, it definitely feels like a rehash of the first set, because we have our Royal Paddling cards, then Narukami is basically different Kagero, or Genesis is different Oracle Think Tank, and we have Nova Grappler. That's basically what the first set was, and it also feels a little bit like that. But my personal issue what I had with this set is the SP of Alfred, because I had the one in my hand, and it felt like a fake card, because the foil isn't there, and his armor, his yellow plate, is the only shiny thing. So when I had that thing in my hand and I paid money for it, I thought got ripped off, and somebody gave me a fake card. About that.
I actually got 4 SPs of Descendant from this set.
The SP of Alfred is like so bad. Like I don't know what they were thinking.
There were some weird ones because like back then they were doing different SP arts for every single card, I think, and so it was weird to do stuff with like armor and like texture and stuff. So yeah, there were probably a lot of mistakes in factory for that kind of stuff. But nowadays, all SPs are just full arts, and it's pretty easy to do all the same.
I gotta start a Vanguard Boomer podcast because I have way too many stupid stories to tell.
Yo, I got so many too. Don't you worry.
Like this set had so much hype around it because people, the entirety of Limit Break, they were just waiting for like Royals to come back. They were waiting for like the main 3 clans basically to make a return. And this was sort of like what marked that return as well. Like I remember when Wingle, the Liberator Wingle got leaked from like the monthly magazine, like people went crazy. They were like, oh my God, it's finally coming back. I think we didn't even know the set yet, like not even the set name or anything, and the first thing we saw was Wingle.
No clans,
and like people
nothing.
were just going crazy about it. And for me, in terms of meta impact, this is like for early, like having gone from Limit Break sets to this set, this had like insane impact at the time, purely because like Descendant came out and basically just warped the format around itself. Like Descendant was the best deck, and it was the first time that you had like it was like the end but reverse, and that it doesn't it doesn't hit, it does something. And so for people, that was like, I remember because I was watching there's a Japanese channel I watched that's been like lately like reflecting on the history of Vanguard.
Nice.
And then a lot of them were playing at this time and like competitively, like in WGPs and stuff. And they were saying how like Descendant was like, you had to beat this card. Like this was the card that everybody was looking at. Like you have to build to beat it or play it, and there was no other choice. And then they restricted it to 2, which was the first time they ever, because before the restriction lists were like, choose like 2 out of these 4 cards and play them, like, like stuff like that. And then this is the first time that they straight up said, okay, Descendant goes to 2 and that's it. Like no random, like, I guess they did say like you choose up to 2 copies from this list of cards in that clan, but then Descendant was the only one for Narukami. So you just played it. So Descendant was like,
Japanese only, I believe, right? That restriction?
Yeah, we never got it in English, but it was so important for like Descendant as a deck was so important because right after the set released, it was Worlds as well.
Yep.
And that, like, I remember when Worlds was happening, everyone was hyping up like, oh yeah, Descendant's gonna take it. It's gonna be easy for Descendant. Narukami's got this. And then like the top 3 was Dauntless Drive, The End.
Yep.
Second place was Ethics Buster with, I want to say Luminal, I think it was.
Yeah, it was Beast Deities. Yeah, pure Beast Deities. I remember this.
Third place was Descendant, I believe. So it's like, and the top 8 was literally those 2 decks and six Eradicators. So like that deck was just so important for the competitive world. And like, but back then I was really, really sweaty try hard in the actual TCG because I wasn't making videos back then. So for me, like as a competitive player back then, this set was so important. And I was also like, Bat and Dragger came out in this set, literally the card that defines spikes for the longest time. Like Bat End is ridiculously important as well. And so I don't know. I feel like this set deserves at least top of C, if not low B for me.
So okay, I completely 100% agree about all the meta points you've made. But the problem I have with putting it higher is that I know what other break ride sets do. You know what I mean?
Yeah, same.
So
same.
like,
but it's just because of how much impact it has.
Right. I get you. I understand. But
push it up to like high C or low B then, because like as you know or don't know, I started with Revengers, so I can only look back and this and go like, whatever. But if you add that competitive viability from that time, I can understand if you want to put it higher.
It was just so important. I don't know. I feel like that was too important.
I am probably one of the biggest Eradicator stands in this call right now, and I completely agree with everything Chris said. I had 4 SP Dragonic Descendants. Okay, I know that this set is hype, but I wanted to make sure I kept my bias out of it and related it to everything else. I think as we go, we'll find that every break ride set is kind of better than this, except for maybe like one of them. And so I feel like putting it anything higher than B is a bit unfair to those sets.
Yeah, we can put.
I think top of C is correct. Spikes and Narukami alone give it a C tiering.
Set 11, this one came out in English before BT10, again, because of whatever scheduling issues they had. And so it was interesting because people were like trying out Genesis without having PGs. And so it was really weird because like I think you had enough support in BT11 to like, or maybe even not. I think you were missing cards to actually build a finished Genesis deck. So you had to wait until BT10 came out. And then the Alcofor support was kind of weird because ripples weren't that great. Like I remember that Transcore was like seen as okay, but it didn't really have a good boss unit to like break right over to actually do something.
No, because
Revlon was
the
seen
same
as pretty. Yeah, like Revlon was seen as pretty whatever. Steve was seen as whatever. But the cards that carried this set were just dauntless. Like everything else in this set is pretty whatever. Even like Seal Dragons had some hype, but everything else was pretty whatever, including like Angels, which was supposed to be like a huge focus with Celestials. But Dauntless Drive single-handedly carried this set, and I think like Dauntless the End like was pretty big in that era for competitive as well. Like I remember it was sort of again seen as like that sort of deck to beat in the English format because it came out earlier, and nothing else really made an impact. Like Tachikaze especially like got some really good cards that then later on became really good. This was I think it was this set where the grade 1 that like when retired calls itself back.
Iguanagor, Iguanagor came out.
Yeah,
Those Ancient Dragons, all of them came out pretty much in this set.
Yeah. So it's pretty important like for future builds of the clan, let's say.
Yeah.
But overall, like it was just Dauntless that was carrying this deck. So I guess it's kind of like BT10 for me, whereas like it was one card carrying the entire set. Everything else was kind of whatever. And I feel like there was more whatever in this one than there was in BT10 because that one at least had like Jewel Knights, Bad Ends, like Liberators forever who liked them, and stuff like that.
My Kagro stand in me wants to put it higher than BT10, but I agree. I think middle C is fine.
I would agree because when I look at the cards, yeah, it's like Dauntless and that's it. Like I don't know.
But Dauntless was Kagero for the entirety of this format, so that's why it's a big enough thing.
When are we ever going to buy a set for one card? I'm going to go to Card Market for that.
Transcore who?
Transcore, yeah, Transcore, yeah.
Transcore was big with Tetra Drive because you could force the discard 2 times, but that was it.
Yeah. So I think middle C is perfectly fine. Don't need to say more. We're playing this set right now in Global Zero. We know how cool it is. Moving on to Eric, I got your job for this one. This is Binding Black Ring automatic S, right? Yeah, maybe A. Automatic S for me, I think.
Yeah.
But we'll let Eric go here.
This is before my time, but when I look at the cards, I think this is either S or A or something, because not only do we have Raging Form Dragon in this set, which is insane, but it's also the birth of Link Joker with the reverse mechanic, which was pretty unique. But more importantly, I see Lucier, so that's also
that was the moneymaker.
Yep, that was it. This is the set that made me money. This one right here. This was the first set that I ever was like, oh my god, I can make money by buying trading cards. Let's do it.
Link Joker was in this set. I am well aware that Link Joker wasn't really good at this time, and it took a while. Yeah. It took a while before they actually start good. But again, we saw a new clan with a really new unique mechanic, which brought in these reverse units, which also gave a lot of clans a unique new boss unit. In some cases were cross-right units for some of them. But I think the biggest moneymaker year and the biggest change, I believe, was Raging Form Dragon, because whenever I hear Shadow players talking about this thing, they nut the room over.
And they barely announced Raging Form Dragon during the overdress stream, and everyone lost their minds. So yeah, that's how cool this set is for people.
Everybody that's watching this video on Steven's channel right now, look on Solemn's video screen and at the background.
No, not the Raging Form playback.
Yo, that Ultra Pro collab, dude. We love to see it.
This was literally my first booster set. I went to the sneak. I won the sneak despite barely knowing the rules. Like this was my baby, man. Like Raging Form was so broken. Like I built a deck and then I instantly got second place at the locals as well. Again, like still learning the game because of how broken this card was. Like I wasn't good. I just like was doing, I do a Raging Form thing and guess I win because it was that insane.
Yep.
And beyond that, of course, Link Joker, reverse. Yeah, I mean, my bias is speaking, but I put this straight in S.
Yeah, and the reason why,
number one in S.
Yeah, and this is, I was gonna say, the thing that I think makes this number one in S is that it introduced not one but two mechanics, and in lock and reverse. But this was the only set, because the next one comes out, where reverse actually matters. because Link Joker at the time with Nebula Lord Dragon couldn't really abuse the reverse decks based on how they worked. But Lugia Reverse was probably one of the coolest decks outside of Raging Form Dragon, Eradicators, and Dauntless Doe at the time. So I feel like that alone, this set made so many decks relevant and so many decks meta just out of the box. And then for the rest of the meta that it's automatic S for me too.
Like, just to add one little thing to it as well, like for me, this was the only set that I imported in Japanese. Like, I had a friend that went to Japan for holidays for the first time, and he was like, what do you want me to get you from Japan? I was like, get me a box of BT12. It had just come out in Japanese. I even had like the Revengers trial decks in Japanese as well, because back then I was still like a crazy Shadow fanboy. Revengers made me fall out of love for Shadows, actually, but then this was also like an important factor for the game, is that this was
your edginess.
He's fuming.
The really important thing for this set was that this set was the beginning of Vanguard's biggest boom in Japan. Like, the Break Ride era was Vanguard's boom, much like how you hear of like the Pokemon TCG boom in Japan, or like, you know, whatever other TCG boom like Digimon had last year. This was Vanguard's boom, and it started with this set, and it went on throughout the entire Break Ride era, where it had like peak number of players, peak number of hype. Like, it was the TCG that people were looking at. And like when they did their like Vanguard festivals, the queues were basically Comic at levels of like hundreds of meters of queuing up just to buy the fighters collection of that year, like one box early. And like they had to make public apologies for like running out of stock, for not managing the levels of hype that weren't anticipated and everything. So this was like Vanguard's boom in Japan as well. So I think for that reason, it should be like the #1 set in S right now.
100% agree. No complaints here.
Yep. 100%.
Now, we just got done with probably one of the coolest sets of all of Vanguard. Let's move on to a bit of an interesting one. Catastrophic Outbreak, set 13. We've got the ender of all, Chaos Breaker Dragon, making Link Joker the biggest threat in this community's eyes for the end of time. Every year they're like, Link Joker support's coming out, like, oh no, everyone's like got that PTSD from this set of what it did to them in their decks. I think it's an automatic A. I don't want to immediately put it in S, simply because I feel like this set became the reason why reverse was bad. And I like the reverse mechanic a lot. And so that is a big dis-selling point for me for this, is that it just made an entire archetype or entire mechanic kind of useless, even though it added a bunch of design aspects to so many decks during this time, which is a big negative. Now, it did it by creating... Yeah, go ahead.
Another thing is that, like, Raging Form could kind of play around Chaos, but the thing is, the meta was so unenjoyable for 90% of the player base, aka the people not playing Chaos, that like, even though Chaos itself is so iconic, I think you gotta like keep in mind how many people like were furious at that card itself.
Right, yeah. So
that's why I agree A, but
it's not an A in terms of popularity, but if you want to talk meta relevant cards, right? Like there's no bigger card than Chaos Breaker when he first came out. So, but in terms of public opinion, he has the lowest of every card ever, unless you play him, and then he's the best card ever, right? So I think I don't want to say top. I kind of want to say bottom of A, honestly, because of just how, like, in retrospect, how hated this set is. But I think top of A makes sense too.
I think this is the most controversial. Looking at all the BTs that we have here, this might be the most controversial set of all time.
Right.
Because Chaos, I think, was also the most expensive triple rare to ever come out, like, on release. Like, I think it was like in Japan, like $50 or $60, like day one, and then they like started tanking over time. But I remember like screenshots from like basically the Japanese equivalent of eBay, like of people like selling it for insane prices. It was insanely like hyped in general, and just, you know, people were going crazy about this set. But the set itself was like, even with Chaos being there, it was still a very successful set, because the archetypes that got introduced actually put up an okay fight, even being reverse stuff. Like Ethics Buster Reverse was actually one of the better decks back then as well. Even though like it did have to play against Chaos, but it had a pretty good matchup if it like respected Chaos as a deck as well. And like Reverse Daisha and Daikaiser came out here as like, Daikaiser was in the trial deck, but Reverse Daisha was like its support basically. And that deck was also like seen as a pretty good deck back then too. And like this was also when I still played competitively and actually like got tops with that deck as well, while like, you know, having to play around Chaos all the time. So it wasn't as bad. Also, this set made Nubatama a thing.
I think it also gave us Tetra Drive Dragon and Chez Noir for Grey Nature and Aqua Force, which are amazing things, but all anyone ever talks about from this stupid set is Chaos Breaker Dragon. So while I agree, there's so many good things about it. Right. I experience other things for sure. Yeah, I 100% agree. But in terms of like what this set represents, it represents the birth of one of the most hated cards in Vanguard, I think, and everything else kind of falls to the side. Right. So I love this set because it gave me Chat Noir, my favorite, one of my favorite cards. So
Is Chat Noir in this?
Chat Noir is in this. Yeah.
Holy
SP's in this.
Also, Lord of Seven Seas Night Mist. Okay, so
Yes.
I mean, top of A is fine purely of chaos, but I actually like Chat Noir and Lord of Seven Seas Night Mist.
Yes.
I literally built Revengers, Chat Noir, and Night Mist Kokaido's Reverse. Those were my
so many good things came out in this set. Like I think that is what I think deserves the A, even though I know it's a hated set. You know what I mean? Like that's why I think
this
A
was
is
one of the first times we had like boss unit double rares that were actually like really good too. That was
great.
like quite rare until here.
We also got Kokaido's Reverse in this too. I don't think I mentioned that.
Yeah.
All right, top of A, easy. This is Solemn's next one is Brilliant Strike for set 14.
So that's some more reverses. We also got Gancelot Zenith. We got Ezel Scissors, which is that anti-locked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Whole board.
Yeah, and then we have some more Genesis, some more Kagero, So why am I getting the Eradicators? I'll just start shitting on this set again, and then you
This
guys
is
will
the
go
Minerva
like,
set.
This is the Minerva set. Oh.
Minerva was very expensive and super popular.
Yes, Minerva was huge.
Like changed Genesis forever.
Straight to D. No. Yeah, I mean, personally, once again, Genesis and Eradicators, I'm like, whatever. Some more, whatever. But given that it's Minerva, I'll give it that respect. But anything else, though, I don't know. I know I'll make Chris fuming again, but I want to put this in B, personally.
I agree.
I think B is actually fair. Yeah, top of B or bottom of B?
We can say top of B, I guess, or middle.
Yeah.
I think middle's fair.
The only things that I remember from this set is, of course, Minerva, because for some reason that's the only unit where Bushiroad thought, let's make a figurine of it and nothing else.
Yeah, because the artist of Minerva is like insanely famous. Like he had like I think he had like a museum opened for his artwork alone. So it's a really insanely famous artist. But yeah.
And the other thing that I remember of this set is that for some reason we got Yaki reversed without having Yaki.
Yaki
So
Bow
that
made no
was
sense. Yeah.
From.
Yep, I think B is fair. These end of like era sets for me are always way less impactful, but when they introduce new things like Regalia and they do it right, I can respect them. That's a B for me.
Do we say bottom B or mid B?
Mid B. Moving on to set 15, Infinite Rebirth, the end of the Break Right era.
All right, this one was very hype actually. This set, like I remember when when Glendios was revealed, people lost their minds. There's still a video from a locals where they would watch the new episodes together, like while playing the local tournaments, and it's a video of like them showing Chaos's ability, and then the whole shop freaks out, like gets out of their chair, starts screaming, running around, and that was the effect like the entire community felt. Like it was insane overall. But this set had so much stuff. This had like staples for Shadows for years to come, like Judge Bow, Swordbreaker, things like that. It had also like essentially like Overlord Rebirth and like the Break Right Overlord were insanely popular as well. There was more Lukier support. There was like Maelstrom Reverse. So they took a lot of like popular things and just like threw them into this set with like new support. Freeze Ray Dragon is in this, which is like still used in Premium Link Joker to this day.
No damage Lendios, baby. Let's go.
And no damage. Yeah. Like it's this set was very impactful, I would say.
Especially
it had, like,
over time. Especially over time.
Yeah. So I would say like it's at least A. Least A.
I want to put it below Catastrophic Outbreak. I want to put it below that.
I agree, yeah.
All right, moving on to 16. I actually don't know the name of this one because I think we had a different name for it in English. By the way, for clarity, anyone out there, we're doing the original version of set 16 and set 17, not version E. So sorry for the guys that don't know what come out in the original ones. But basically, anything that comes out in the Neon Messiah booster is not account for this. So don't think of the Great. Yeah. Don't think of other stuff. Brawlers is split between these two. All that fun stuff. So yeah.
Prominence Glare isn't in this.
No, he's in something else. Yeah. So 16. This is Eric's, I think.
Okay, for 16, then we have Legions of Dragons and Blades. This is one that I do quite remember a bit, but mainly because of my experience from the G era, because players use certain cards. Because I was playing against in the same locals. I had one of the world champions invitees, Lubo Chen. So he
shout out.
Good God.
He popularized the I believe the Thing Saver
Thing Abyss.
Deck. No, not Thing Abyss, but Thing Saver with Sanctuary Guard.
So Thing Sanctuary.
With Seeker Thing Saver Dragon. I hate that card with a passion.
The scars are showing.
But this set also brought in. It is basically this set is the birth, I believe, of Legion. This is where we saw the first Legion.
Well, the trial decks, but yes, this was this first core set for it.
Brawlers with Metalborgs, Risers were in this, Musketeers. So, from what I heard, is that Legion is probably the most unpopular mechanic in era of Vanguard because of a couple factors. That the support was kind of skewed between clans. Some clans got overpowering support, and most other clans either got nothing or crappy Legion support that absolutely did nothing. And I believe a lot of
promos sprinkled
a couple promos in the future. After the era was over, in the future we got more stuff.
If I look at the cards themselves, the most memorable things that are in this are the Royal Pennant Legion for Thingsaver and Metalborgs, because they had something in the beginning of G. With
They did.
But the rest of the cards of this set, they just look kind of whatever. Not really that amazing. I know about the Spike Brothers with, I have heard a lot of Living Proof talked about this quite a lot with Ogle and that kind of stuff. There were quite interesting.
Yeah.
But I have no experience with that, so I have no clue what to judge them on in this part. So for me,
So let me clarify some things really quick about Legion in general. Is like, it was probably at the time the biggest power creep thing we've ever seen in Vanguard, and this set is no surprise because the Legion mechanic was able to be abused by so many things. Like Cat Butler loop with Razors was insane. We had, of course, Thingsaber Dragon. Eventually we got Thingsaber Abyss as well. We had
it's also the fact that you had a static 20k Vanguard no matter what is what also, like, in the previous eras you had to work towards even like a 21k, you know, whereas Legion just said instantly, oh, here's 20k, you slap an 8k or 7k booster behind it, there you go. You're asking for like 20k guard for one to pass was like, that was a new standard, like, that didn't exist beforehand unless you gave your opponent the break right to actually do that kind of stuff.
And while you were shuffling in your triggers into your deck as well, just for some extra stackability throughout every single game. So in terms of power, no doubt Legion was one of the biggest jumps we've ever seen in Vanguard.
Yeah, like this set, like it came out right before, it was like a week before Christmas or so. I remember because my friend bought a case of it and we were like cracking everything open. But yeah, like the Legion sets came out during like the usual like off period for competitive, because it was like December and January for BT16 and BT17. So it was like the off season, I guess, if you will. But I want to put it pretty high because like it had a really big impact and it changed the way people play the game, because it was a mechanic that needed both players to be on grade 3. And it was like the first time that I think the seed of the idea of grade 2 gaming started to be planted.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like this set itself was actually very impactful because you had Seekers that were like an amazing deck right out the box, Brawlers that were ridiculously good, but better with the next set. So I'll save that for later.
Yes, I'm with you on that one.
Sinbuster literally put DP into tier 1 for the first time ever, and it topped like almost every like Springfest of like the next Springfest that when we were getting this product. And like DP was always at the top, especially with like the early G support especially, and that was like the only time DP got to shine at the top, so that was really big as well. And like I said, Cat Butler Risers was the like super kind of like toxic deck people didn't want to play against, but it was one of the best.
Yep, it was a stupid combo.
In terms of meta impact, like almost everything, like spikes included, like basically almost everything in the set outside of maybe Neo Nectar was really good. And I don't know, I feel like this deserves at least high A. I think like at least high A, even though Legion was unpopular because of the way that it was supported. But if we're looking at it, you know, in terms of like card quality and stuff like that, and also like the power jump, I think it's pretty high. Yeah.
I put it right under Chaos personally, but
same.
Yeah, I think it should go under Chaos as well, just in terms of popular opinion, or also just in terms of just like the best seeds of the era in a sense, right?
Yeah.
So I think 16 for sure, high A.
Yeah.
And then we're going on to 17. This is my set, Blazing Perdition. Literally everything I love about Vanguard got supported in this set. Kagero, Narukami. I actually did enjoy playing Link Joker, and the Link Joker Legions were pretty cool in this. Blaster Joker came out.
Too,
yeah, these were Imaginary Plane Dragon. Actually got some support later on too, which is nice. I shouldn't say support, but it became better in G era, which I liked a lot playing for like triangle locks, easy every turn. Like Chris was saying earlier, Brawlers actually not only comes on the map, but it's also one of the most powerful decks ever. It was literally a board wipe every single turn against your opponent while also dealing them damage pretty much, which is just so crazy in terms of grinding. And like Narukami finally became a deck that you could grind with and beat your opponent just by pure advantage, actually, which is super
Mhm.
cool. We got a bunch of other fun things too in this, and later on, Brawlers actually comes back with thanks to the other G era Narukami support like Chatura, and it was so much fun. So I gotta give this at least bottom of A in my opinion, but I think we could go higher because of Perditions being amazing. Now, technically, I want to correct anyone out there. In the original set 17, we did not get the Great in this set. So if you think the Great is a selling point for
Prominence
this,
Glare either,
or Prominence Glare, but we did get we got Vortex Dragonute and Pain Laser Dragon, which was more than enough to make this deck pretty powerful when it came out, but it wasn't nearly as good once the Great came out.
It also has Grand Blue, so
Right, it did
This
get
was,
yeah, we
this
did.
was a really good set for Grand Blue, by the way. This
Right,
was
yeah,
insanely good.
I think bottom of A seems the most fair here because I don't think it was as impactful as 16, but it definitely feels like it deserves to be higher than pretty much everything else in B and C.
Maybe higher than the Maelstrom set and the
I agree.
BT3. Like we can put it next to BT01.
Yeah, I think that's fair
under
too.
King of Nice, yeah.
I even think these two could switch places honestly as well, but I think they'll go back and forth.
Yeah.
Depending on who you ask. All right, and that's it for Legion. That's how much that's how many core sets came out for Legion. So we're gonna hop into probably I think everyone else's here favorite era in G. This was the era that I played the most, and I do love G way more than other things in this game. But I have a soft spot for Break Ride. But anywho, we're gonna go ahead and start off with Generation Stride. I believe this is Solemn's.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, this is where we get honestly not my favorite clans, but it is the start of G, and I think G was very crucial for Vanguard because it brought a lot of like new types of interactions that we never saw before. Legion was kind of like, the way I see it, the testing phase for getting the if you go second, here's a new mechanic type of deal. So yeah, we got Chronos Command Dragon, which is, you know, it was a GR, but it wasn't really a big
It was not
Hyped up in the anime, disappointing in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, we had Sane Blow Dragon, Takemika Zuchi, which was like, okay, I guess.
But the cross came out of this.
The cross came out. You read my mind.
So Overlord T Cross, that is basically what you're looking at. Root Flare.
Root
Victor,
Flare
some people
Dragon.
love that. Ragnarok. So, you know, it is like, it brings some pretty important cards, but it's not where G is in full swing yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was
this
the
is
first
sowing
phase.
the seeds for G. I mean, you know, the cross is a Legion. He's not even a G unit, right? So he's not even like what G was supposed to be. He's just like, oh, here's some cool support we forgot to give you earlier. So here it is.
Personally, I'd put this in B because it's like sure start of G, but
I would agree because of first sets of a new mechanic. This set doesn't have the iconic cards like any of the other ones. And yes, it introduced Gear Chronicle, my main clan, but I'm probably telling you Gear Chronicle sucks ass when
it's not until set 4 that Gear Chronicle becomes the deck for a while.
It becomes playable.
Then it was still, I think set 5 with like time leap support is when it becomes the deck.
That's when it's the deck. But next stage is just like the start of that for sure.
Yeah.
So I think I honestly think bottom of B, you know, like in terms of average sets, that's what this is. I think is it's amazing.
I don't think it's that average because like the important thing was also that this set gave us like the Cray Elemental strides, so any clan could actually like play strides and be able to get the 3 drive checks, be able to abuse it in certain ways. Like DP didn't have a, for example, didn't have a stride yet, but we had Laurel, which abused strides, and so we could just like swing at rears and with the Cray Elemental stride and just like plus off of that. And I think like the set was important also for the competitive circuit because I think this is when people started to like a lot of fresh blood came into the game with G as well. I kind of like, I don't know, it makes me want to knock down Breaker of Limits a little bit because we use the argument of like this is like the start of something new for the game. Because to me, like GBT01 is kind of the same. It's the start of something really, really new. So maybe for putting this at top of B, we knock down Breaker of Limits to like somewhere middle of A.
I can probably do. I agree with making it top of B, and then I think middle A above set 1 is better for set 6. Yeah,
Agreed. Yeah, that's what I would agree.
Because like it's that same vein of like starting something, but set 6 and GB1. Sorry, set 6 did a better job of starting new things than BT1 did. All right, sick. Moving on to set 2, Transcendence of Bloom and Doom. No, that's the Z move from Pokemon. something like that. Set
Soaring
2.
Ascent of Gale and Blossom.
I was like right there. Okay. So this is Chris's.
All right. So this set, it was close on being the sort of BTO7 of like, oh, there's just supporting like stuff people don't really care about, like, you know, like Neo Nectar and Great Nature. Like, it wasn't that popular back then. But this set had Lambros in it, it had Aquaforce in it, and that was like, what, like, it was a deck that just like, you had a trial deck, you had a booster set, there you go, tier 1, one of the best decks in the game.
Literally, yeah.
Yep.
And you
Like,
also
this
had
set
Title
was
Assault from set 13.
So, yeah. Oh, we didn't even talk about Title Assault in set 13. Like,
We didn't
this
need
set
to. We didn't need to. Everyone knows.
Yeah, like, this was so important. Also, like, it introduced some of the best cards for Great Nature of all time. Like, Crayon Tiger was in this, Mana Garmer was in this, that was still used for a long time, but Crayon Tiger in particular was super important in general.
Won a
Apart
regionals
from
with
that,
that
like,
boy.
Gears got like an okay stride with Fate Rider. Royals was kind of like, didn't really get too much to eat with.
Got Saint Blow Dragon, I think. Oh no, that was set 1. Never mind.
That was set 1. So outside of Great Nature and Aquaforce, nothing else was as impactful. But
Even the
those
GRs,
two, like,
yeah. Didn't we get 2 GRs in this set, or was it just the
no, it was
Blue
still
Lady?
just one.
Okay.
It started with 2 GRs from set 4 onwards.
Set 4, thank you. Yeah. Because that's when we got Doomed and Next Stage. Yeah.
Yeah, but I just want to remind people that like Lambros was the best deck. Like,
the
Lambros was
stupidest
the uncontested.
Deck, yeah. Uncontested
like,
until even when Saint Guard came out, it took a while for that deck to actually kind of get like knocked back down.
So Lambros was only best deck until the Legend deck of Ren came out, in my opinion.
Exactly.
Like, once you had Abyss Legend deck, then it was.
Yeah,
and that came out soon after this. Actually,
it came out, I think, midway through set 3, right? Like
it was with set 3. With set 3.
Yeah, it was with set 3. Yeah. I think like a week or 2 afterwards, maybe. I don't remember. Like, it was close. It was very close. I think it came out after though.
That Legend deck had its own win condition before G Guardians were a thing.
Literally, we had what was it? Well, Diablo. We had Diablo. Phantom Blaster Diablo, crazy card. So I think set 2, it's fair to put it higher than 01 because of just meta impact overall. It came out with so many things, especially later on with Crayon Tiger and all that stuff Chris said. So I think at least underneath set 17 and bottom of A, I think seems like a fair place to put it. Because I think it was better than Demogler Invasion and set 8 at doing pretty much the same stuff of like impacting the meta and the value of this game over time.
I'd even put it higher than 17, but that's just my bias because it's like Crayon Tiger, Lambros, those.
Yeah, you don't need it. I think 17 might have just overall more people that like it more so than set 2. I think is what makes sense about it.
It had quite a lot of staples that stuck as well, I think.
All right, and then
people in the comments fight it out.
Yeah, exactly. Like all these things in the same tier matter the same amount to us, pretty much. But you know, it's arbitrary, really, where they all go. Yeah. But it might matter to some people. Moving on to set.
You want to talk about bias, Solemn? If we're gonna look at set 3 with Sovereign Star Dragon, like, I see some cards, Phantom Blaster Dragon, or a Geyser, Clarence Sword Dragon. Like, there are a couple of heavy hitter Shadows cards.
Phantom Blaster Dragon, the Break Ride. You gotta be specific there with that, boy. Yeah, so let's move on to him. Sovereign Star Deity or Sovereign Star Dragon. We got Messiahs coming in here. We got Shadow stuff coming on the map. We got a whole lot of nonsense, actually.
Like, this set, like, it was just before I start playing the game, but even I know well where the impact these cards are. Like, Aura Geyser, that card probably was relevant till it got power creeped at the end of G once Luard could do more than enough and it wasn't needed more card.
Literally, it took Luard to make that card bad.
Dynasty Messiah was so long necessary for any Link Joker card. Like, that card was expensive, that GR was ridiculous. And of course, like, Durgan that also Nebula Dragon, Big Crunch Dragon for Link Joker was also a pretty nice tech card for just easy lock a column, no problem, no easy. And then, of course, Guild Array for Dark Regulars. This instant win condition in the right circumstances is pretty nutty. So I think as a set for what it had, like, there were a couple of boss units that were kind of like Yasue, Charlotte Vampire, they were all kind of...
That Murakumo Stride that could multi-attack, that was pretty cool.
That was actually like seen as tier 2 back then. Like, I want to give some context. This set came out like the Friday before like a French regional, or I think a French team league, and like a lot of people I remember were like, I don't remember if it might have actually.
I think it topped. Yeah, because that was the only reason we started talking about it here in America before we got the set. I think was because it did well over there.
Yeah, and like I remember like people were just like scrambling to get it. Like, we arrived at the hotel, people still needed like their like gold paladin like Unflipper PGs and stuff like that for Bluish Flames.
Yeah.
So it's like there's also Bluish Flame support in this, which pushed that deck even harder.
Yep.
And on top of that, like I think this set was pretty important as well because it had a lot of like the strides that were used for a long time. Like Big Crunch was used for quite a while. Gilles de Rais for like for Dark Regulars was used for quite a long time as well. So in terms of like long-term staples, I would say again like with Aura Geyser, this was pretty important.
Like, what's funny about
think
G era
I
is
know
like, I think there's like 2 stages. There's early G and there's late G. And because in late G, there were so many different things that came out for pretty much all the major clans that the decks drastically changed over time from beginning to end. So I think it's really important to kind of isolate, like this was pretty much 2 different eras, early G and late G. You can tell by the different box arts on the tier list here. So I think in terms of early G, this set was probably the best one that had come out up until that point.
So, but speaking of that, though, I think it's pretty important to realize it's not Luard that creeped out Aura Geyser. Like, Dragheart Luard used Aura Geyser a lot.
Yeah, Doomed.
Belial pops and so forth. So only the last Luard actually creeped this out.
Yeah,
Right,
the
right,
BT14.
Yeah.
You could use Belial with Luard. With this, try to like go plus 5, 6, or 7 in one turn. Like
Doomed was the one that you abused the most. Also, get rid of your opponent's stuff too sometimes. But Aura Geyser was still playing the deck too, just for extra draw if you needed it, which most of the time you didn't.
To flip it.
And to flip it, and to flip the Doomed, obviously, yeah. So I think this is a bottom of S, honestly, for me. I think. I don't think it was
bottom of S, yeah.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's as crazy as some of the other G sets that exist. But I do think it's probably one of the biggest ones that came out early. So I think I'll go top of A for sure. Like I think it's better than set 13. I think because it was the first time. Like what's funny is this was the first time we got Lynchker support that people liked. It was like, oh, Messiahs are cool. I love Messiahs. They're not.
They don't make me not play the game. Great.
Yeah, they're not toxic. They're cool. So I think that was like kind of the birth of this as well. Of like, oh, positive era Lynchker. They got some good press. Here we go. This is this set. Awesome. Moving on to set 4. Oh yeah, Soul Track against the Supreme. Super cool set. We got first double GR that we talked about. We got Doomed. We got Next Stage. We got Gear Chronicle coming on the map as like an actual cool deck. We got this was the birth of the good Alt Mile, correct? The one that could like flip himself and do some cool stuff. We got
Asha. Air Mile, right?
Ooh, yeah, Alt Mile, Out Mile, whatever. We got Asha stuff, Renoculus, the really cool stride that you use to enable Bloom stuff later on for shenanigans. And I think those are the major things. Angels,
Angels, Fenrir,
right?
Like, can I jump ahead? Can I just be real for a moment?
Yeah.
I want to put this as the best set that we've covered so far.
Right.
There's several reasons. First reason is this was the first time we finally got full art SPs. This is the most important, like,
SGRs, baby,
for me. Like, for having SPs used to be just like literally alternate foil and a bit of texture on the same usual triple rare card. They removed the borders. They made it all beautiful. Like, this was the beginning of those style of high rarities, and that like there were still some people that didn't like it. I remember, like, it was crazy, but
right, like how you not like beautiful cards?
It's change. I don't like change.
And like on top of that, basically every single triple was actually great. Even Mega Colony with Darkface, that was like a different playstyle for Mega Colony. That I remember, again, this set came out right before big regionals, and Mega Colony was seen as a threat because you had to you had to respect play around it a lot more. Yeah, like Next Stage was great. Like Orgeyser Doomed was fantastic. The only downside to this set was that it was the beginning of persona flipping GRs, like Next Stage.
Right, exactly. You had to get 4 of it. Every GR before this, you could have gotten away with just like 1 or just none of it. You know, like GRs became the things you had to get. It's kind of like the VRs of today, but not nearly as many of them came out at this point.
Also, there's actually a pretty huge point as well, because whenever people say, "Oh, G was so expensive," no, this was so expensive.
This is so expensive.
It was exactly this moment where GRs flipped themselves, like Amnesty Next Stage. That was the moment that G was stupid expensive. Literally,
remember when Doomed was really expensive?
He was like $80 at a point, wasn't he? Like, he was insane.
Yeah, Next Stage too. Next Stage was
to buy Next Stage. Like, those
they had to make a promo Next Stage to make them cheaper for people to get. Remember that?
Yes.
Promo Next Stage.
So once they fixed that, like, that expensiveness kind of waned, but this was truly like, this traumatized people.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I
think I want to put it at the very top.
I 100% agree. And by the way, I totally forgot Angel Feather came out in this set because I didn't start playing Angel Feather until set 7. I played it in set 7.
This was my main deck back then.
I loved Gabriel, actually. So I have to put this in S for myself personally, because this is when I started playing Angel Feather pretty much. So I got to put this in S myself too.
Another reason why I say it would be S is like some of these cards are, I think, still usable till this day. Like Next Stage is still used in Gear Chronicle just for Gear Groovy, the interaction. The Darkface card, I believe that was the one that was used for Worlds last year to win, or the World year before that to win against Golds because of the rest stuff.
Yep.
And also, when we go to the comments, like Refrose is in this one. Like, that card is still
Refrose
Upstream is in this for timely players.
Upstream is, And one of my favorite that everybody hates that I play with this card is Calibum, the starter killer.
That is this set. Oh my god, I thought he was set 5. Yo, that's
I
awesome.
have an awful story about Caliboom.
Go ahead.
Me and
Oh,
Jay were actually playtesting gears extensively before an event. And so we basically agreed, like, oh yeah, Caliboom isn't that good. And so we both agreed we're not playing it. And the day after we go to the event, round 1, we go against each other. I call something because I'm like, he doesn't play Caliboom anyway. And he Calibooms it. I'm like,
you slime ball.
outbreak.
How could you? Oh my god, that's so hilarious. I hate when I play against my friends at regionals. I'm like, oh, he doesn't know what I'm on today, even though we tested. I feel bad.
Yep.
Yeah. So this is a very memorable set. Has to be S. Speaking of this, I think we can put set 9 in D. Correct. This is the only D I see here on this list right now.
I'm agreeing with that.
Yeah, because we don't have one yet, and I'm like, we should have a D at this point. There's some stinkers. So I'm gonna put D down there as like the only one where I'm like, compared to everything else, like how could you even put this higher? We'll get some more later. Don't you worry. There'll be plenty of more. All right. This is Moonlight Dragon Fang set 5. This is Eric's. Go ahead, bud.
Oh boy, this is a really interesting one because this is, I believe, the actual birth of Vanquisher. Yes, we have Vanquisher the Grade 3, but now we got a really good stride with Voltage. Like, that thing was pretty decent. But we also got the new Messiah stride, Genesis Dragon Excel's Messiah. But also, we got Harry, more Oracle Thinking support. We got another Link Joker stride, Chaos Universe, which I believe was pretty good at the time. And also Lunatic Dragon, more Nightmare support. But I think the most important thing about this set is the birth of the Elite Four for Gear Chronicle with the whole Time Leap shenanigans. And the interesting enough about this set is that at the time, from what I heard, is that a lot of people didn't really realize what Time Leap could do, and they just got apart. Like,
they were so naive to it.
Double call a grade 0 at the end of the battle, like this is really bad.
Yeah.
And honestly,
We thought TikTok was bad.
We thought this was the original TikTok ban.
I think the strides in themselves for some clans were pretty important. Like, I know as a Vanquisher player how important Voltage is. Like, still at the end of G, even when we had GB8, Voltage could be a better finisher than GB8 because sometimes just his skill was better. Also, the Chaos support was pretty decent. I think the time leap is probably what makes or breaks this set in my eyes. But that's basically me as my bias.
Right.
I want to add that this was the Chaos support set where the Chaos Stride came out and literally like basically said like, "What's up? I'm back, y'all."
Like,
the hand blocking started as well.
Oh, it was. I played Chaos for the first time in this set, and I was like, "Why didn't I play this back in set 13? I love being rude to people. Let's do this." It was insane.
Already I thought that the next universe did that.
No,
was it already did?
They already did this. Yeah. This already did this.
Oh, okay. That's a way better than I thought.
So this is already automatic top of 8 for me, I think. But I think it's an S candidate for sure. Maybe? I think low S makes sense because it didn't like the only drastic thing it did was it gave Gear Chronicle a completely different mechanic than it had before, essentially, and that's pretty cool.
And it made it the best deck for like a year.
Like a year, right? And then Chaos was around forever after that too. So I think this is an obvious bottom of S for me. In terms of overall,
it had like staples for other clans too.
Exactly,
like, like for Pale Movement had Periton and stuff like that.
I think bottom of S is very fair. And also, I totally.
As well.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I totally skipped Solemn and Chris, by the way. So this is actually Solemn's turn. So you can do set 6.
Yeah, so Transcension of Blade and Blossom. Now, before I talk about this one, I think it's crucial to realize that another product came out at the same time, and that is the Night Rose Trial deck. Because this set, okay, it has Altmile, huge. It has Asha, huge. Like, these two archetypes got way better of this set. But not only that, it also has Spectral Blaster Diablo. So the Abyss Diablo deck got another restander. If it couldn't Legion for some reason, it now could with a Stride. Vortimer Diablo was kind of irrelevant-ish, unless you played pure Diablo. It got Victor, and then it got Night Rose. Now, for a year or so, Gear Chronicle was basically the only deck, right? Like, Time Leap was the deck. And finally, it got like a proper rival in the G game, where Night Rose could do very similar unfair moves.
Yep.
Well, they were like the two top decks, right? So you had like it was these two kind of towering over the game for months on end.
Also, I think we
also
have
Sanctuary Guard.
yes,
was
that's
it-
what I was going to mention. Yes.
In this set, or was it the next wave of support for Nitros when he actually started to
So
steam?
it was only after that it started steamrolling. Yeah, but
Okay,
this
so
like
this is phase-
introduced some of the key cards, let's say.
Right,
And
like
of course, like, the trial
Cannoneer,
deck.
Hollow support in general, all that stuff was in this set.
Yeah, and Nitros from the trial deck, which is very crucial as well.
Very,
But it's indeed like the next set where that truly started to shine, whereas now it's just like ramping up.
And also, this is like where we're going to get to like in the new era of G, where like all these new keywords are being added to every single clan to like represent their new sort of mechanics that are being born in this era. We got Hollow introduced this set, Timely introduced last set. We got Brave, all that fun stuff. So this set was revolutionary in its own sense for being like the first way to keep that going, essentially, which is super
They
cool.
also added Mephisto to Pale Moon, which was a huge card for them.
Oh yeah.
Like without Mephisto, they couldn't really build like the fields that they can.
Mhm.
I want to say like Mephisto really just pushed them over the edge.
But in terms of
This
like,
was interesting as well. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say like in terms of standalone value, the cards that came out in this set weren't really valued until later on when the decks became like truly like the best decks in the game. Like Brave got a huge boost. This set got a huge boost in terms of people buying the product and stuff like that. So in terms of like hardcore, like value came out of it right away. Not necessarily, but it did increase over time for sure.
I want to say this is like similar to like being at the top with set 4 because it created these decks that like Nairos was amazing from the get-go. It was basically
Yes.
like how we talked about Lambros earlier. It was amazing from the get-go. Also, like I played Novas at this time, and like this was the support of Victor that a lot of people consider like if you want to learn, like it doesn't matter which era you're playing in. It could be literally be today. If you want to learn the most like kind of like convoluted attack patterns that min-max your like value per battle as much as possible, it was like this build of Victor that like Nova mains would easily recommend as like there's very specific patterns that maximize on like everything being used. So it was really interesting for that reason alone. And this still had more like staples for the clan like going forward. Like Cat Knight and Boots was in this, which is still used to this day.
Yep.
And you know, there was just a bunch of things that I feel like were really good. It made Brave was an interesting one that people weren't too happy about, but then it got popularity with its own kind of audience. And then Diablo was interesting because that kind of let people finally build Shadows again without having to play Revengers, and people just played like pure Diablo with the Legend deck. So it was seen as a really nice entry point into the game as well.
Right.
Yes.
So I
Another
think
interesting one is that this introduced the Raging Form Rush deck, where you could do a double Raging Form with Dark Bless Angel. So that started topping like here and there as well for a little while because people didn't know what the hell it did.
Oh yeah, that was in this set too. Yeah,
that was in the Raging Form
this
stuff.
is the set where the whole blaster engine was created with Flogel, Barkle.
Yeah,
and
that's this.
and-
That's where
and-
Sankard. Yeah, all
And
that stuff.
this is the actual set that has the stand trigger for Jesus for his
Ah,
This was
blasters!
the
All the
set.
blaster fans
Yeah.
out
with
there.
Sarugal.
Yeah,
It was this one.
Sarugal. Okay, cool. So I think we're totally in agreement that this should be at least top of A. The only reason I don't want to make it bottom of S is because I think that disrespects set 3 a little bit. So if we make this bottom S, I think we have to make set 3 bottom S, and then we have a lot of S's in here. So I feel like
I'm cool with that.
I feel like
It's
top
also
A.
brought forth 7 Cs.
Was this or was it? It was set 8 that 17s became what it
Yeah, because we got the Great One Night
was like
Runner.
the first Night Runner and so forth.
But yeah, like Nightcrow came out, Night Runner came out. I would say bottom of S. With that in mind,
Yeah, with
17s in
how
mind,
this changed the Grade 2 game of everything, you know, we haven't really touched on that much. Like, that's how we played the game back then, pretty much, to kind of stall out strides. This was the start of a lot of good engines for decks to kind of make that game plan a lot better for them, or just dominate it with that game plan, essentially. So I think bottom S is fair. In that case, I'll make set 3 bottom S as well, but make this one bigger than it.
I feel like this is better than set 3. To be
Really?
honest. I
Just
think that
overall
this is where we
better?
cut the distinction. Yeah, I think this is where we make the distinction. Honestly.
Okay. I'm cool with that. Boom. Less S clutter anyway. Moving on to set 7, this is going to be Chris's Radiant of Blade and Sword,
right.
something like that.
All right.
Our
So
the
this
angel
set-
stands are going. Here we go.
I'm not even going to start with Angels. This was the set that came after G-Guard introduction. This was G-Guards. Like this was the first main set with G-Guards in it. So I'm going to like just suck in the Fighters collection that had G-Guards in it into this one as well. Like regardless of anything else that is in this set, G-Guards were so important for the game that it cannot be stressed. Like this was probably the most positively received new mechanic like that, like people just couldn't even find anything bad about it. Like you just couldn't find anything to say about it that you like that was actually bad, you know. Everyone was just celebrating it. It was revealed in the anime in a really exciting way that like people have been wanting to be like, people wanted things to be revealed through the anime for a long time, and finally we got something revealed like this again. So like just purely because of G-Guards, this was great. Of course this has a lot of staples too, like the, you know, Gorgus like defeat flare you know, like as a G guard, it's still mentioned to this day. Like Gabriel got support, but this is kind of where I started to feel like Gabriel support was kind of meh. Denial Griffin is in this set, which is ridiculously important. This was when Gallop finally became a deck. Yes. Outside of just being like a random one of in the extra booster that DP had earlier on.
Right.
So like Gallop was fun. It wasn't great, but it was like fun enough as it was. This was also where Dragonic Blade Master finally gave Kagero a different
Titan.
This is Blade Wings. Do you remember Blade Wings?
I played Blade Wings.
I play Blade Wings, bro.
Like, however, it took a while for them to really come together.
They got a Fighter's Collection
Tiger. Yeah. Tibble was the Fighter's Collection card. Yeah, Tibble. So. Yeah, I completely agree. Set 7 was a game changer. It kind of was the continuation of G Guardians to make them an actual thing. G Guardians are amazing. It adds to the already inherent interaction we have thanks to guarding. It's impossible not to love. It even was balanced too in the sense that you could only use heal triggers, so there is a limit to the amount you could use. Eventually, decks were able to find ways to use at least 5 G Guardians a game, like indirectly, just having 5 face up essentially. But it was interesting for sure. I don't think it's necessarily the most impactful in terms of overall value. There's tons of staples, but they're all very low rarity or non-impactful once other things come out later. So I feel like it shouldn't be higher than A, maybe.
It depends on how we want to look at it, because if we're gonna go what DifferentFight just said, if we're gonna incorporate the Fighters Collection with the fact that G Guardians exist, it has to be the number one set for Vanguard, because till this day, everyone is always saying we want G Guardian cards like cards. We want G Guards back in the game. We want cards.
We want more interaction stuff like
G Guards, and it was G Guards that started this whole discussion, because then we learned Bushiroad is actually willing to create such cards. They can make it. But they're not doing it anymore.
Right. Yeah. So I feel like this
thing is that if you add Fighters Collection, you also need to consider no sale suddenly.
Yeah, exactly.
So
I was going to say
that was actually a different Fighters Collection. That was 2015 Winter.
Yeah, with
the Fighters Collection with G-Guards was 2016.
Yes.
So there were two different ones.
So I think when you think about it, like in terms of adding G Guardians, I feel like that's not fair to the other sets on this list.
The other sets, yeah.
Right. So, but it is the first set that had G Guardians in it, which is good enough. But all the sets after this do have G Guardians in them as well. So
and at least put it above Chaos. Like it's like at A.
I agree. Yeah. It should not be less than A, but it's got to be above the set 13 for sure. Maybe not set 3 though, because set 3 was more like this idea of like the best of early G, like we kind of talked about and stuff. Besides maybe Soul Strike of the Supreme, right? So I feel like second place.
I'm not that attached to set 3, so that's the only reason why I'm kind of like
right,
kind of hampering it down.
but pretty much everything in A is on even footing. It's not necessarily who's on top and who's on bottom. Like these can go back and forth depending on how you're feeling that day. Honestly, you know what I mean. So that makes sense. And then we got Absolute Judgment, G set 8 going to Eric, and this is an interesting set for me.
Very, very interesting.
This is an interesting one to talk about.
Okay, let's see. Oh, okay. Oh, there was this set. Okay.
Yeah, this one.
Absolute Judgment. So this not only gave us the Fenrir Stride, which I believe made I'm not sure if this was the final piece that we needed for the whole Wiseman loop, because this card enabled a lot.
Taro. This was
Taro
it.
Was this? Yeah, okay. So this is where the birth of the Wiseman loop. We also got the Shaharot Stride, which was a decent field wipe. It made us some weird interaction with Assassin, because a lot of people were seeing if could you multi-tech with Assassin afterwards, wasn't really legal.
Right.
That had like a really ruling nightmare was that. Glorious Raiding Dragon for gold, it's an insane finisher. Yeah. Also another Messiah support. But interesting enough, this set also gave us a really, really, really good stride for Grand Blue with Gauche. This was basically their draw engine. And also we got Glenson's Vampire for Dark Regulars, which was arguably the better grade 3 for Dark Regulars, even though it wasn't the main grade 3, which was really weird.
Yeah.
But there is like so much more in this set. Like we had the Necro Lily, which is one of the best G guards that we have. It's on par with Denial Griffin at some point. Like Solemn can probably explain how that card works.
Cannoneer, baby.
And
so you could literally just denial them.
Yep, and that was again like while Wiseman loop was a thing, there was ways to deal with it for several other decks, so it didn't become like as rampant as maybe 7 Seas Rush was as rampant.
This was where Seven Seas Rush became a thing, though. This
became the thing. Yeah, for sure. This was the set literally after this. I think Gears of Fate came out, and then it was Worlds, right? And
because Night Spinel.
Night Spinel or Night Crow came out earlier, but they had the grade 2, the grade 2 that could just loop stuff and have good damage on rear guard and stuff while you were still grade 1.
Can I go back for one moment to set 7 because I remembered something? Set 7 was the start of SP clan packs. Does that
yes. Okay.
That was the beginning of SP clan packs.
Guarantee top of A now. You're right. Because of just being able to bling out, have that drip for your decks. People went crazy for that, for sure. Yeah, of course. I honestly forgot about that. And then everyone would get mad.
It's around here somewhere.
Everyone would get mad because their clan didn't get an SP clan pack, and that was like the thing.
It was a really good set because you had the birth of 2 meta-defining decks. Because you had the Wiseman loop that was relevant for a really, really long time. Even in premium, it still was a thing for a long time. I don't know if it's really now a thing. I don't believe it is.
No.
Then we had 7 Seas, which basically made Bushiroad realize they screwed up for a while and tried to kill it.
Like, we had Sabreeze, but that didn't matter really too much for 7 Seas Rush, I think.
No, it didn't matter.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
And so I think
they had one.
Exactly. Yeah. I think for Absolute Judgment, for what it is, has to be. Oh God, because like it's kind of like Catastrophic Outbreak, like it was meta defining, but not in a way people were happy about.
One random thing I can also add to this. This had a bit of drama in the Japanese community because it was until now. I don't know if they ever topped this, but the set with the most clans per set, it had 8.
Yeah, it was so much support.
Set, which is like you can't imagine that like throughout all of these series, the most they went to was like 5. I think was the most.
Even
ever.
The original set 1, which had like so many different sets for the first, only had like 7, I think.
Yeah, and this one was 8 clans that all got like decent support.
All got decent support.
It was pretty big in terms of like I remember Japanese people were just blowing up when it was revealed. They were like, "How are you even planning to support every clan like properly? Like, what are you even thinking? And stuff like that."
Mm-hmm. So I think that gives it a good score no matter what, even though. It gave birth to some pretty toxic stuff that happened later on.
Put it next to Chaos, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's literally Chaos G era, honestly. like weirdly, Moonlight Dragon Fang was when Chaos actually came out for G era, but this is when like people felt like Chaos came out in G era. You know what I mean? So I agree. It's right below Catastrophic Outbreak for me.
Yeah, I think also like for me, I have like a random sentimental feeling with this set because this was like the first time I ever went to Japan was like as the set was releasing. So I remember like going to Japanese card shops for the first time and like being amazed at how they look and like seeing this set had like just come out and like seeing all the new cards, like watching players play with the new decks that like we haven't seen anyone play with yet, like even like in videos and stuff. I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like for me, that was like a random like touching moment when I remember this set. But yeah, apart from that, it was a really defining set though, like insanely.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay.
This is where we jump.
This is the jump to one of my favorite eras. This is the birth of my favorite human being ever, Kazuma, Shoji, Divine Dragon Caper, the birth of Luard, and actual support for Luard. Now,
basically, G Part 2 starts here.
This is G Part 2. Yeah. This is when Chrono's older. This is G Next, all that fun stuff. A really big season, actually, because G Next was basically... After the first like 2 or 3, basically up till Stride Gate, people like didn't love the G anime that much, but next was when people were like, "Oh, the G anime is like the best thing ever right now."
Exactly.
So this is a
like
very by far the best in terms of plot, character development, all that fun stuff. So I love this set for that. Remember, and so, but this set though was interesting because while Luard did get its actual first set of support here. Besides being free strides, I don't remember the biggest deal about Luard until set 10, which is the next. It was great. It was the best version of Shadows, but it wasn't as good as Gear Chronicle with like the ZTB stuff that was going on at the time, or Time Leap, or even Chaos was still around. Yeah, ZTB's come out in here, which is pretty big. So I feel like while it is the start of a great era of G, it's not necessarily the best that we've seen so far, and I kind of want to put it as a B tier 1 because it feels like the same wave as GB tier 1 to me.
I want to agree on that one because the issue that I have with this set, even though the reveals, everything is pretty hype, I can remember it quite fondly. The issue that I have with a lot of these cards are kind of because VMAX, fine for Vanquisher. You could win with it, but it wasn't
VMAX
great.
Memes. Like I remember at regionals, people go like, I died to VMAX.
Like this was a great set for how we felt about the game. It literally made us fall in love with G even more than we already did. But in terms of a set and the cards that came out of it, like compared to the other ones that are coming out in a second, it's not that big of a deal, I don't think.
Wailing Tempest was also a nice card, but at the same time, it also didn't really do as much. And for the rest of the cards, I always felt like it's neat, but not that great. And even the Gear Chronicle support, yes, it laid down the basis for a ZTB.
It was so mad back then.
It took like a year for them
we
to
still
actually
played Gear Groovy, you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
we didn't ship the pure ZTB for a long time.
And on the other hand, we also can't put every G set in S.
That's the we love G.
That's
G's
the pattern.
amazing. It's a great era, but there are bad G sets compared to the other ones, so we have to make sure that we treat it fairly and not be too
This one
biased.
Let's put it in B.
This had, I want to go through a couple issues with this set. This had like, I think it was basically carried by shadows. Every other thing in the set was really cheap. I remember like the ZTBs were ridiculously cheap. Like I think the Split Pegasus was like a euro or two, like insanely.
50 literally cheap AF.
Yeah, like it had spike support, which I completely forgot about. There was like a Rising Nova like stride.
Yep.
And then like this was where Angels started going to like the rescue spam playstyle, and instead of like the defensive kind of like I gain power during my opponent's turn with Broken Hearts playstyle, which kind of like for me was like a departure from greatness for Angels.
Yeah, no seal was the best for in my opinion for no seal for Angel Feather.
And then like the Narukami support was kind of whatever because they split it with Eradicators at the same time. Which, like,
we got weird like Eradicator Sigma for Descendant and stuff. It was so
like Raging Form Stride too.
Yeah, like that's cool.
The staples for Shadows were so expensive from like immediately. Like it didn't matter that Luard wasn't even like that fantastic from the get-go. It was like I remember like Morfesta was like just $30. It was just like $30.
It's a shut up pound. It's gotta be $30.
I remember being super mad as a Aqua Force player. I was super mad at this set because I saw Janka and all those garbage wave cards. And people were like, "Oh, this is gonna be great." And from the first second, I was like, "No, this sucks ass. This is awful." The only card here worth anything is Wailing Tavas, and everyone was mad at me for saying that. And I was right.
You were 100% right. You know what? I think with that, you're actually 100% right. I forgot how bad Aqua Force was in this. I forgot it was even in it. C tier, maybe? Like the first G set in C tier?
I wouldn't put it in C, but I would have put it in B.
Bottom of B?
Bottom B, I think.
Bottom B, I think. Because compared to the other ones, it just doesn't compare at this point to them, I think.
Yeah.
Now the next one.
I would put it below the Great Nature one at least, but yeah.
I think
somewhere in B.
I kind of want to move Brilliant Strike to C. Does anyone else kind of agree this isn't like a weird spot here, or no?
BTO2 I kind of won also, although I talked about it pretty highly, but Brilliant Strike I agree. I feel like it goes down to C.
Yeah, top of C at least though, for sure, because of all the stuff we talked about earlier. You know, Minerva is in this, which is amazing. So yeah, that's
because we're now getting the grand picture right. You know.
Yeah, exactly. Like once we get a good move going, we're over halfway through. You're like, there's a lot of sets here that don't belong, I think, in their area, and we're gonna do like a final thing at the end with like some final thoughts too. So that'll be cool. But the next one, Solemn. This is you, Radiant of Dragon Sword, something like that. This is set 10.
Raging Clash of the Blade Fangs.
I was like right there. It's okay. Go ahead. This is the meme, right? I know. I'm not good with names of these things.
So we had Ogma, which was just a meme, in my opinion. Like, sure, you could like it was decent in Luard at the time.
It was like your
16th
16th stride you played, right? It was like the last one you played if you had the room.
It was very situational. But then you got favorite champ Victor, which was
actual win con.
Actual win con. Card was. I pulled an SGR then. I was so hyped for that.
Yeah, I think Luminous Hope Dragon for Royals wasn't all that great. I seem to remember.
But Brave got some good stuff in this though, I think, in general.
Yeah, Heavenly Law Gurgit, some more Gurgit, some Taichi, Mura, another Victor, of course, like the new ride that was way better. And also
Logwit was pretty good.
Belial Owl.
This is Belial Owl, the set.
Became it.
This was the money card of the set, basically.
And this was a set that came out, I believe, right before Grand Fest happened here in the United States, 2017. Bloom was a talked about tier 2 deck, but the main thing was Night Rose, Luard, and maybe Gears if you were feeling frisky and people wanted to do some time shenanigans, which actually won the tournament, actually. And I remember this set was my favorite set ever because it let me reborn my Shadow Paladins from the previous G era, and I ended up taking my Luard deck with the Witch 9K that gave you 2 Belial Owls on Gaul, which is just so stupid and abusable, and I got top 8 with this at Grand Fest. So I feel like, for me, this set is like game changer for me in terms of what G era meant to me. Because it was the first time I ever used a proper G deck to do well, which is awesome. Before that, I won with Great Nature, Testerfox Legion Loop, you know? So I'm like, I wasn't playing G the way it was meant to just yet. But this is a great set, I think. just for that reason. But
Personally,
Yeah.
that's my bias for this.
I have mixed feelings about this set because every time I look back, I know that I was hyped for Selvina because I was playing Arsha at the time, but that card was replaced instantly the next time that we got support for Neonectar. But then afterwards, when I look at the set, the only cards that actually matter are the favorite champ Victor because it was the new win condition for Novas, and of course Bilal Al. But most of the other cards were like kind of whatever.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Too. The Gurgit Stride was like it stayed like used in Gold Palette and G zones until quite recently. I want to say, right?
It was the premium collection that changed it, right? For that Gold Paladin Stride, I think that came out. What was it? I forget which one it was.
But I
But
can't remember too well. This had Blouse in it, which was fun. That was
but yeah, Blouse was pretty cool, getting some more support there.
It
This
also
was
introduced Bobo.
Oh, that's you gotta not forget. Yeah. Wait, which set was? Hold on. What was Honolly? Was BTO6? Was GBTO6? I think was Honolly. That's really important.
That's an S. He's an S. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
I gotta make sure. Don't miss the Grail.
None of the Grail Elementals mattered in G itself, though.
No, it mattered in premium.
Yeah, in premium.
In
later
premium, it
on.
matters. Yeah. Which it's a factor, because eventually that's what these sets became. Is your premium.
Honolly did matter in G, right, with Timely, because I've seen people actually tag it against Timely.
I kind of remember it too.
Yeah, not specifically at this time, but in the you did play it in Luard eventually to kind of stop those spammy multi-attack decks.
Bobo wasn't really used in G. I remember that. Like when premium became a thing, then that's where Bobo got his resurgence.
Yeah. So I think, like looking back, the community love for this set is really just based around the cool stuff that came out in it, but it wasn't necessarily the craziest set. I think in terms of what it did later on, if that makes sense. Besides Luard, I can't think of a deck that actually became like tier 1 immediately from this set.
Yeah, it can go to C.
I think it's a very average set, but it's got to be top of C. It's better than 01, right? It's better than 01.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. But in terms of what I remember at the time during GR, like if I'm go with the group that I was, with the hype that it was, I think set 10 was probably where we were the lowest mellowish because most of the clans were kind of whatever.
Like everything was established at that point. This didn't really change much besides make Luard actually one of the best decks.
And the issue was that this came right after set 9, which was also a bit of a low point. So there was like, is this the new direction we're going? Can we get something else?
Right. And like the Tachikasa stuff was so disappointing, for a lot of people. For me, I was disappointed by Tachi's for sure with this.
I remember that too.
I don't know how they created a worse Gaia after what?
Like it was insane. I was like, oh, so this is just actually worse. Okay, cool.
They managed recently.
Oh my god. Yo, how do you go from Anger Blader to Gaia, honestly? Okay. Set 11, Demonic Advent. This is Chris's.
This one's mine.
Yes.
All right. I'm glad this one landed on me because this was the set where I actually moved to Japan. And so for me, this is where not only is this like really sentimentally important because this is when I moved to Japan and like literally got to experience the card game world, in the like the mecca of card games, essentially. On top of that, to me, this set and the next set is basically like peak Vanguard card balance. Yeah. Even though there are some like iffy cards in both of these sets, to me this is peak card balance. Like this is when I like when people ask me like, oh, what was your favorite like you always say like, oh, middle of G was your favorite, like you say the power level was so great there, like, oh, it's so great about it. I'm like, this set began with this set and it like went on for the next one and whatever extra boosters released around here, like this set was like the best level of power level. Like it was great. They introduced Dominate without making it like blow everything else out of the water. Exactly. It was good, but it was a balanced level of good. It was on like a similar footing as the other great like tier 1 decks at the time. This was the set where like Kagero got like Ziegenberg, which was an amazing strat at the time.
Yes. Oh boy.
And like on top of that, like it had Ganslot Peace Saver, which was an insanely important stride for Royals that basically like Blasters was kind of falling off after Sanctuary Guard got hit because it was mostly used in Sanctuary Guard. And this basically told people like you had the Aichi Legend deck and then Ganslot Peace Saver came out right after that. And then they basically said, all right, here's your new Royal deck. It's going to be great, and it was great. And I don't know, like this set was great. It gave more ZTBs. And then the next set is where ZTBs actually became like the competitive Gear Chronicle deck, essentially. And
Bladewing became huge here as well.
Bladewing, yep.
Exactly. I want to say, I feel like there's even more. Like there's so many important like.
There were so many decks in this format. I remember just being so good, and then later on with set 12, it became just like an actual like crazy.
This was like one of the most diverse formats ever. This is also the one time I hosted my own tournament. Like this was the first time I organized like my own actual like kind of like tournament that like anyone from Europe is welcome to enter. Like I had my locals like backing me and stuff. Yeah, that
like,
was the tournament.
Yeah, like
I did pretty well there.
Yeah, you topped with Aquaforce.
Yeah.
nice.
So,
Nice.
Yeah, like this was
garbage
this
new support.
I wanna put this in S purely because this is like peak. This is peak Vanguard.
This is peak Vanguard and G, I think. Yeah, for sure. If Soul Strike of the Supreme was peak early G, this is peak whatever G became after that. You know what I mean?
Peak Vanguard for me. Like this is peak Vanguard period for me.
For sure. I think
also though keep in mind that this set came at like the right time because Blade Wings isn't necessarily in here, right? But it's this set that made Blade Wing Tybolt and everything like an actual proper deck with War Tiger Jaeger.
Yep.
This is the set that came together with the Blaster Legend deck. Luard already got their proper support, so a lot of decks at once were brought into life.
Yeah, this deck tied the bow, the other ones laid the foundation, you know, all the stuff before it. So I feel like as a set itself, it didn't do like it wasn't actually crazy. It was balanced. It was a balanced set that created so much good stuff for everything. You know, that's a great thing if you take into consideration everything that came up before it, right? And so I feel like as its own self, like if you just look at it by itself, it's not doing that much. It's introducing Dominate, but because if we look at the context of how it affected the overall community at this time, it was huge. So I feel like
I want to put this as the best set ever created.
Best set,
like,
top of S.
This is the best.
I agree.
This is the number one deck.
I agree. You should go in S. I'm hesitant to say it's better than Soul Strike of the Supreme merely because of, like you said, this was in Vanguard was kind of like at its low point. And this is when it kicked it up a notch and it was like the right time and stuff. So it felt very situational that it did really well. Soul Strike of the Supreme by itself was crazy. Like it needs nothing else to be amazing. You know what I mean? So I feel like
right under Soul Strike.
Yeah, right. Like literally right underneath. Like if this is but like all these things are number one. This is just like the order that we're saying them in, I think.
This is also when they changed the design of booster boxes for basically ever going forward. Like they reduced the number of packs, added more cards per pack, and 2 rares per pack, basically.
Yep.
And then the boxes got slimmer as well, so that was another
Vanguard
random.
became cheaper as well around this.
Yeah,
time.
Vanguard became
exponentially.
cheaper,
Like Dominate out of this set, even though it was like the coolest thing that came out of it, was so cheap, and then it wasn't until the next set that like we got like Ouroboros, and I think Renee came out as well. Like that's when the stuff
Renee was later.
Oh wait, no, you're right. It was set 13, I think, or 14 for Renee. I'm not sure.
But keep in mind, so like basically when people say G was super expensive, that was true in like the previous era with the GRs
Set
that
4.
themselves, and
Set
it's
4.
changed that forever.
They was really cheap to make stuff. Like my triple Rs, the
right
most
around
expensive were $10 each, and if at all.
Especially if you played the game before that, because ZDB, the whole entire core before this was dirt to pick up. And if you just picked it up because you wanted to, you were so rewarded in the future for the next couple sets.
Yeah.
Easy S tier. All right, moving on to set 12. Dragon's Awakening or something. Eric.
Dragon King's Awakening.
Dragon King's Awakening.
I was right there. I felt it. I was right.
Where DifferentFight started with set 11 was the start of a new thing. This is basically where it all climaxed into, because afterwards we're going into something different. But
Way
set 12
different.
is arguably my favorite number one set that ever created in Vanguard, because not only did we get a lot of interesting stuff, we got the completion for what at the time Luard, we got the pinnacle for with the new Dominate deck. Also, Battle Sister out of nowhere became a really solid deck.
Yes, Battle Sisters was the first time I ever played Oracle Think Tank. First time.
Was a non-existing thing for the entire year. Like nobody cared for it, and suddenly 1 or 2 cards came out, and everybody's like, "Holy crap! It's an actual clan."
Literally 2 cards.
Except for Mohammed, he topped without it.
Yeah. Well, he's a god. Us plebeians need good cards to do well.
On top of that, this set also made Vanquisher a really solid, good and fun deck.
1000%.
Neo Nectar also became a really good deck with interesting strategies. And one of the interesting cards that came out of the set is, in my opinion, is Claret Sword Helheim, with the way how it interacts with guarding your opponent. If they use perfect guards or G guards and you gain stuff, it had a really interesting dynamic. The card wasn't the greatest, but in terms of design-wise, pretty awesome. And of course, this set made ZTB really, really solid and strong, because now every piece came together, and out of nowhere, every single 50-cent card became expensive out of nowhere.
Also note, Luard became extremely big brain here with their loop.
This was the loop.
Noise.
This was the loop.
Yep. So what's crazy is like Demonic Advent was like the epitome of good card balance and support, but this is like the same thing, but all that balance was kicked up a notch. Like everything in this set was kind of stupid. Like they supported so many things.
At the same time, it didn't creep out the stuff from before
exactly.
either. Like,
it added to it. It added to the game. It still added to the game. Yeah.
This might actually be my favorite set. I don't know.
Yeah, this in my opinion is the best set because for some reason I don't know how they managed it during this time. The decks that were viable were Blade Master, Battle Sister, Ichikishima, Narukami, Luard, Dominate, ZTB.
Yeah.
Blade Wings.
They supported so many things, and it was all great. Like people say, like Vanguard always had like a balancing problem with like supporting stuff. This was when they supported so many things and made them all viable. I played like half of these decks too, and I was like, I can go to a new locals every single week and play a different deck every single week and still do as well. And it felt so great to have that confidence in things that I loved and just enjoy myself in Vanguard the most and do well at the same time. That's why I was so hesitant for Demonic Advent. I'm like, we're about to do Giant's Awakening, and that is my set.
But there's one more important thing what I think about this, because we have other eras where there were a lot of decks viable.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing that made this distinct from any other time in Vanguard, in my personal interest, is that any deck that was good at this time also was completely different than the other. They had a different mechanic, different wings, different
we're gonna get to that in V series. Don't you worry, Eric. We're gonna talk about how that's an issue in a second. But 1000%, this is top of S for me. This is number one.
This is definitely number one. I think also like I still remember like going to WGPs when I was living in Japan, and like you could expect any deck any other round. Like I was going to like daily locals back then, and almost like there was so little crossover. Like I would be playing against like Garmor sometimes and stuff like that, and it still felt like a proper like threat. Like everything was just so well done, so well designed, so well executed in this period that like this set is just peak. Like, I have nothing but good memories of this set.
Exactly, and I think the community agrees with you most of the time.
Yeah.
For those that were playing it,
there'll be some person that has like insane Ichikishima PTSD that's gonna go like, no, this is the worst set ever.
Yeah. So that's a different story. That's whatever. But anywho, 100% agree. Now we're gonna get to a new era of G, which is gonna be fun to talk about. Set 13, accurately named Ultimate Stride.
What?
I'm excited for the hot takes of this one. Now, as the Kagero stan that I am, I love this set because Destiny comes out and he's like the craziest deck I ever played ever. It got 7 of the top 8 worlds for that year. It didn't win, so that speaks to something, I guess. But overall, this set was very impactful. Introduced Ultimate Stride, brand new mechanic, kind of like the epitome of what the G mechanics were in terms of power, in terms of aggression, all that fun stuff.
But
I don't really like it. But yeah, it introduced so many new things. It did a cool job of introducing new things. And with the extra boosters that supplemented afterwards, it was less of a craziness for just like the 2 or 3 clans that got Ultimate Strides in this set. But it was pretty crazy when it came out. And it was very unfair, I think.
I'll fight right now.
Go ahead.
At the time of this set's release, none of these Ultimate Strides did anything.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
I'm not necessarily saying the Ultimate Strides were crazy.
No one cared.
No one cared. Drachma was maybe played. You didn't have to play it if you didn't want to.
I remember like after class, like I went back to my dorm and had to make a video like, guys, don't panic. We don't really need these strides. I know it's a huge deal. I know they only put 1 per case, but please don't quit Vanguard.
1 per case! 1 per case! That was so... Like, I remember people was so freaking out. Like, Drachma is so situational, and Megiddo was cool, maybe if you were playing Aquas or Grand Blue, but nothing else. So, yeah.
Honestly, I love this set. I actually love...
I love this set as well.
Love this set.
Okay, great. I didn't want to be the only one that was like, this set's great, even though people hate Ultimate Strides. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't want to be the only one. I think it's a great set, and I was like, is my Kagero stand taking control of me? It's just such a great set.
No, I thought the set was great. It's literally only ZR distribution. That is the only problem with it.
And eventually that did get fixed with stuff, right? Because they came out with like those reprints for him.
In all honesty,
but that wasn't enough.
No, it took too long to come out, but it was something.
Yeah.
So like, I want to quickly butt in here as well as like this set to me, it continued that really good design from the last 2 sets. It was a little tiny bit above. I think that Tabas and Overlord were just a tiny bit above. And like the situation in Tokyo at the time was like any locals you went to, like you had to have at least some cards in your either main deck or in your G zone that could like deal with Kagero. And like it felt, it was kind of like okay. It didn't feel too abusive. Like I remember when what was it, the Purge? When the Purge came out, like people went crazy about it, but at the same time, like if they just didn't hit enough on their 5 drive checks, or if you didn't even let them have 5 drive checks, then it wasn't as big of a deal. Gabriel here, while the support wasn't great at the time, all the pieces of the Angel Feather support here were like they were super essential for the Ultima like stand loop build later on. So that was insanely important. Tabas is like, I've never played Tabas in my life, but somehow it's one of my favorite decks ever created in this game. Like Tabas in this set, I think was like some of the coolest design, because you had these layers of like, not only do you have like increasingly like powerful strides, like of course the like Alexandros was insanely amazing, but you had to like sequence your attacks so carefully, because this was back when we had the old once per turn ruling as well, right? So you had to make sure like to not attack with like the title or whatever else you had, to like not proc them too early.
Similar to an overgrapple with cool Hank and stuff.
Yeah, like I love this, like the design of cards in this set. I felt like it was great. There was like a couple cards that weren't. Oh yeah, this was the Valios set too. Valios was
yes,
big.
Valios, Blue Wave stuff. Yeah.
The anime at this point was also insane.
In GZ this is GZ.
Except for the moment where they had a sword fight and then stopped sword fighting to make a card fight. Like what the fuck?
Well, we don't. The card is mightier than the sword in all animes like this. But yeah, so I agree.
Like at that moment, didn't they show Megiddo for the first time in the anime before showing it?
Yes, yeah, that was like it came out. That was, you're like, what?
I was sitting in my kitchen in my dorm and like watching, because we only had like TVs in the dorm's kitchen, and so like I was sitting there in the morning like watching this, because I knew like, because that's how they revealed the Purge, and that's how they also revealed Megiddo as well, and Drachma too, I think.
They
did
such a good job in the anime for getting us hyped for these sets. It was so crazy.
It was great.
So
I still remember the music for the moment he made. Like,
I remember being like, "What the heck is about to happen? Is he gonna die?" I was like, "Oh, he's gonna die! That thing is so crazy. Is it a squid? Is it a metallic dragon? I don't know. It's awesome though."
And the fact that like it killed your G zone if you failed to win that turn was like, as a mechanic, it was great. But it's just the way they handled it with the distribution.
It's like Legion. Like Legion was cool. But we have a sour taste in our mouth with how we had to get it and how we had to experience it. It's like the promo thing, like when they make
this is a lot less of a sour taste, though.
Yeah, exactly.
This had a lot more positives.
Exactly.
I do want to interject a little bit, because you guys are really positive about this set. I'm more on the negative side of this set. Like the interaction in the card design was in the set themselves was really good, like you already explained. Like there were really good and awesome dynamics. But one thing that I don't like about this set, and it basically started to make a precedent for future sets where it really ramped up, where one, we saw a lot of anti-lock mechanic for Link Joker, because Link Joker just got a special set. So we saw a lot of anti-specific design cards that came after set after set. But the biggest thing that I have an issue with was with the GRs, with the Purge and Alexandros, is because they started to make a trend where at some point it became, you only strike this turn after turn after turn because this is the best option. In this case, it wasn't as apparent because Overlord did have some other options.
Later blasted it up.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Alexandros, you could have some other options, but in Aquaforce's case, Alexandros was really, really, really good. Like you could just go into it and keep going into it. But this basically started that trend, and it became even more of a problem in the sets that came after this. Because after this set, like every other clan, like Great Nature got this, Neo Nectar got this, Nova Grappler, I believe, also got
it. Every clan got it.
Yeah, everybody got this. Like, stride GR, you keep striding until you win the game, basically.
Literally, whereas Victor from the Stargate set was like that. It was crazy.
I will say,
so I agree that you went from like you strike this 60% of the time or 30% of the time to you strike this 80% of the time, but knowing when not to, like when to do that 20 was still very crucial. Because like Aquaforce, for example, if you chose to stride Alexandros when you should have actually gone Lambros with a double Melania draw, that lost you games. So
no,
like
I completely agree. Like this wasn't the set where it really, really kicked off, but this was where, for me personally,
started the precedent.
It
was the extra boosters and stuff that followed before set 14, before it became the actual way we played.
This set has that sour taste in my mouth because of because I think about this set when I think about that negative part of old end of G.
So
I also Well, one last point. I remember also the interesting thing in Japan, because we're skipping the extra boosters,
exactly,
was that like we basically had like this thing where if you went to locals, you had to decide whether you're teching against Kagero or teching against Link Joker. Because when the Link Joker like clan booster came out with like the busted chaos support, like that was like I remember people were like, "All right, do I know these people here? Do I know if they're Kagero players? Do I know if they're chaos players? Do I tech against chaos?"
You had to tech
'Cause we
against
had
your
the lockers
locals,
and
not
stuff,
even
right?
regional
You
locals.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
also
yeah.
had the OTK, the leader players. There's
Oh
also-
yeah,
gosh,
that was-
those
that was-
mad lads. I had a friend who did that. We all hated him every time he brought that stupid deck. Yeah,
That
so
Link Joker set should go into D. Like it's not in here. But
no, it's
Yeah,
not. In,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
that's
it's
so
like if you want to talk about
terrible.
hated sets, man. That's a big one for sure. So I feel like this set, like we talked about, has a great slew of support, but it did get some negative press based on just like how we all thought about Ultimate Strides in the short term of how it came out. But then if you look at it over the grand scheme of things, this was a good set in terms of design and what it brought to the game. So I think it's at least top of B, maybe even an A for sure.
I want to put it like right below BT12, so like still an S to be honest, because it was really really good. It was still a great set. Just like it had the ZR, but the ZRs didn't feel. The ZRs weren't as important at that time,
Mhm.
and so overall, like the community still responded pretty positively to this set. I think it's only later that like the other Ultimate Strides came out that it got out of hand, and I think like
yes,
the
dust.
Dust. Oh my
yeah.
god, they had to change the way that card stupid worked. It was you know
Yeah.
what? You're right. I think I think I'm giving some of my dust hate into this by putting it in A. I think
Yeah, because like
Middle
remember as well, like Ultima and Dust were like, oh, I'm going to end the game. Cool, Ultimate Stride. Whereas these two fuckers did nothing.
they did nothing.
Like,
It was everything else with the set that was winning.
Only if they wiped your board and you guard it with everything, and then you have your one Ultimate Stride fodder, then Megiddo mattered. And any other opponent did nothing. Drachma never, ever did nothing. So
Yeah.
like
It was always like a very situational. Maybe I'll go into this kind of like.
You're like, oh
but
my
even
gosh,
now-
I came in with
Dust and
this.
Ultima.
I'll do it. You know, it was win more like by so many regards. It was literally the win more cards at the time. All right.
Yeah.
This I believe this is Solemn's one, Divine Dragon Apocalypse. It's at 14.
Oh, cool.
Apocrypha.
Apocrypha.
I
It's
can
the same board.
disarm. I can disarm everyone before they get to talk. Let's
Do
go.
it. Do it. Yes. Yes.
So G booster set 14, Divine Dragon Apocrypha. Probably we called Chaos the most like controversial set, but I think this might be the most
Yes,
controversial
yes.
set in Vanguard history. So first of all, you have Gize, and now at the time, like first it was announced, and we were like, "What the fuck?" But on the other hand, it then did nothing. Like Angel Geese was like, all right, but in G's life, Geese just didn't actually perform quite as much as people were thinking it would.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is. Honestly, maybe it's because guarding was way harder. Like you had way smaller shield, but I don't know why it didn't do much.
People see
So-
Floodgate, they go burr. I hate Floodgate. That's literally what it was, and it wasn't even good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can feel that. But then we got Ultima and Dust, which were two absolutely insane Ultimate
Oh my
Strides.
God.
And
Like,
Renee was in here too.
We also got
yes,
we also
Fides,
got
which was
Ultimate
actually
Edge Boy.
good. We had
Yep.
Heritage, which was like take 2 turns. Like try
Mhm.
telling that to people. Take 2 turns is now a mechanic. Like people
Guaranteed.
didn't like that. Luard became like so much better.
Oh my
Absolute
God, it was
insanity. Obviously not the same as ETB and Rene,
No.
but still like
It
really
was still there,
insane.
yeah.
And then, well, yeah, Rene there, like we already talked about it. Sharod became insane. So everything in this set, honestly, except for maybe Genesis, was super, super good.
Mhm.
So while the meta itself might have been balanced along those clans, everyone
Yeah,
under
it was
like,
balanced to the sense that you played 4 clans, right?
This was a power creepy set. Like a lot of people refer to this as like, this is when they went crazy because they knew they were rebooting. I don't really know if it's even that bad. I feel
No, I
like
don't
in
think it
the
was
V
that.
series is when they went crazy because they knew they were rebooting.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like this set was like I randomly remembered like it was around this time that like Bushiroad was sending boxes to open like to YouTubers. I don't remember if you got any Solemn. I feel
no,
like
I
you
wasn't popular enough.
got one at some point from Sasha. Did you
yeah,
not?
I got them from my favorite set, Q4.
Oh my god. Well, anyway, I
Oh
got
my
2 free
goodness.
boxes and pulled an Ultima.
Oh my god.
Oh my
No,
god.
3 or 4. I can't remember.
Oh, Ultimate's nuts.
Yeah, but so this set as a whole, honestly, like if you just look at the set and the clans that came out of it, they were relatively balanced because they were all insane.
Yeah,
But-
all good kill on the first try.
But when you think about the overall game, how it
first,
fell
so,
after,
like-
G guard first, and then you go GB3.
Oh yeah, if like there was only really like Rene that did that much, I want to say, because like mostly ZTB still won on their heritage, I want to say,
Yeah.
which was like
Yeah.
slightly
The
later.
heritage was
They had to work
stupid.
towards it.
Even though I'm a Gear Chronicle player, I really despise this set. Like Heritage, the playstyle of the
Really?
deck, like the problem that I had.
Prodigy was so cool though.
Oh, it's
Prodigy was
cool.
not
It's
the problem.
great.
The
It's
problem
it's
with
super cool.
The playstyle of this deck was like when we had the previous support with GBT 12 and GBT 11. Like I could go into the new Phoenix, I could go into split packages, I could go into Next Stage or Gear Groovy, I could go in Gear Next. I had all these options that every single one had a good reason to play and to do. But once this setup came out, it was basically first stride, you always go into split packages, second stride, heritage, win the game. Or instead of first stride, split packages, I go aggressive, use the Phoenix, and then second stride, heritage, and you win the game. And that's basically where 99% of the games resulted into.
Watch out, because sometimes you would go split Pegasus, Gear Next, and then Heritage.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
Gear
Gear Next
Next.
could
I forgot
sometimes
about
go
Gear
in
Next.
between.
Now that we know everything we know about Apocrypha, I feel like this is going to be a weird set to place because you can look at it both ways as like a super great set in terms of just like busted support coming out, but you can also look at it as like a terrible set because it was unfair for pretty much everything else that wasn't in this set. And so it could be looked at as kind of like one of the worst sets in terms of like the D tiering because it's not necessarily bad cards that come out in it. It's just bad for the game that it existed. So I feel like it's going to be in the middle because it'll be just hard to tell for sure how we feeling about it like on a given day and in terms of the hindsight of the game because when it first came out, Geese was nothing. Later on when Premium got announced, Geese was everything. So it's going to be a combination of things, I'm sure.
Not even that.
Not even that,
Yeah,
but Protect made Geese
Everybody
crazy.
was talking about Geese, so you could
Yeah,
say
yeah,
Geese.
yeah.
Talking about
I never had a problem with Geese, but people had a problem with Geese. You know, Floodgate, Goper, I hate that, right? Yeah.
So I think a very important thing about Apocrypha is that I feel it's a victim of what came right before it. So like while ZR distribution is still awful and like we've been loud about that from the very get-go,
Yep.
right? And Dust and Ultima were way stronger than the other Zeroths. I feel like the power level that's inside the archetypes like ZTB, Arena, and so forth, they had to be because of how ridiculous the Stargate booster was that was right before it. Because like Stargate, if I don't know if everyone remembers, but you know, the Zoo Nation booster was good. It was arguably stronger than Ultimate Stride. But then Stargate came, and it was literally you either play fucking Victor or you play this Chaos thing. And no deck could play around new Chaos. Like people can say, oh, just get good. Like, no, they just full locked your board and told you fuck off. So like, no.
And they locked it from hand as well.
And they lock from
And
hand.
from
You
back,
could not
from
play around
package,
it
everywhere.
at all. And even
Yeah.
your unlocking wasn't fast enough.
Mhm.
So like you had that or you played Victor, whose unlocking was fast enough because they got 2 unlockers. They got the G-Guard and they got the
crit.
Trigger, was
Yeah.
it? Yeah.
Yeah, the
So literally that was a 2-deck format with the most insane power creep I've ever seen. I hated that set for that reason. And so if you wanted to fix that, now you needed to release a set with a bunch of clans that all could beat those before. And instead of printing unlock on every GBT 14 clan, they were just like, you know what? We're going to make it so these clans can beat these other ones even without unlock.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that
so-
100%.
Right.
GPT 13 was like everyone was still pretty happy with it. Then the Zoo booster came out. It didn't really like power creep it as hard. Like Blue Sha or Blue Asha, like people felt was really strong at the time. And you know, like Great Nature was like all right. And
Ghidorah was cool.
Ghidorah was like something really fresh and like different. And like I think Meg Colony players like that kind of like gimmick. But then like the Stargate booster just creeped everything up. And then like, you know, GBT 14 creeped everything up again. And that's like that pattern is what like why at the end of V series people were like, oh, it's just like the end of G. Not so much because of the mechanics or the cards or the effects at the end of G, but because of that pattern of like this set creeps the last one, this set creeps the last one. And like
A precedent has been set. Everything needs to go above that, otherwise it can't compete. Yeah.
Yeah, like that pattern just like that's why a lot of people dislike the end of G was just that pattern itself.
So I feel like what we're saying is like Apocrypha as a set may not be as bad if you take it away from the context of what G was at this time for a lot of people. So yeah, Apocrypha's an interesting one. Like there's so many great things about it and there's so many bad things, but only the biggest bad things come from the context of what G was at the time. So I feel like we don't need to hold it that much against the set itself. And when you look at the set overall, it kind of was like, I don't want to say whatever because Heritage is nuts, but in comparison to what else we got in G, yeah, it kind of was, right? So
I would still put it in A despite all its issues.
I think we can agree. I completely agree. I think low A or maybe even mid A is probably perfect for it. Maybe like below or above 15 because it feels like a set 15 set, you know, but just way less controversial, I guess, in a sense. But again, we've explained the reasons for that. So
at the same time, way more, right?
Exactly. So I feel like, exactly. So I feel like 15 and this can go hand in hand. How's that sound?
It's somewhere around that era. Like, I guess like Chaos set, like 1408 and the Legion set, I guess, are kind of like similar in that.
Like, they're great for what they did for the game, but we hated them when they came out, in a sense.
With the controversies.
That came about, which so like in terms of community value, they're up in the air, but in terms of what came out on them, they're pretty great, like objectively, right? For what they did for all the stuff. So I feel like that's pretty fair. Mid-A makes sense. Last G-era set.
But again, if you're like just from a perspective of ZR distribution and how powerful, like you can put it in D for all I care.
Yeah, like there's the arguments, right? But if you want to look at everything the set did, right? Everything, not just the bad stuff. If it was just the bad stuff, I could complain about a thing in almost every set. You know what I mean? So awesome. That's it. We ended off G-era in a weird fashion where pretty much everything was being higher because she was honestly just amazing for what the sets were. In terms of core boosters, there were some busted extra boosters, but that's not on this list, so who cares?
There are 3 total cards A.
like literally, it's pretty hilarious. In true G fashion, we're fast forwarding. We're gonna do our very best to keep it relative to the entirety of Vanguard, so both premium and standard, not just standard itself. We will towards the later sets give some exceptions in terms of distribution and stuff because of Coco. Those are all extenuating circumstances. It's not these sets' fault that stuff happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it might matter, so we'll talk about it. First things first. Unite Team Q4, and this is actually Chris's set, so I'll give it to him.
Damn, it's unfortunately giving it to me because it's the worst set of all time ever created in the history of Vanguard.
You want to know, before we get to it, you want to know what I hated most about this set? Even though we got stuff coming out after, didn't it feel like we just played this set for like 8 months? Like it was like a year of just this set to me. It felt so long. It felt so long. Even though we got new stuff, just didn't matter.
It's just this set the precedent of like things are getting dumbed down, and like also like it didn't really have much contribution to premium. Nova's like sure like Riser Custom and Brutal Jack were used later on for like the OTT is like the only like I'm thinking like Alfred popped up for premium. Kagero didn't really get much.
Nothing. It got nothing.
Nova's got a couple cards for Bustard later on, which came out very soon after this.
Yep.
And OTT got,
Geese.
Ichi Tom, basically.
And it was like OTT Geese too, the birth of that.
Yeah. So, but like for standard, like I hated this set. Like I remember like brute forcing myself to like it, brute forcing myself to promote the game, even though it was like this isn't the game I fell in love with. But I was like, I want to grow my locals again. It's a great opportunity, so I'm gonna do it.
Right. Like
there's so much negativity attached with this set to me. It's like, but like I'm not gonna say like every V series set is bad, but this set was like. This set just felt inexcusable. I don't know. Like, especially when they showed us later on that they can be creative with the V series, it just feels, it begs the question, why were you this bland in the first V series set? You could have sold us on much more than what you were doing with this set.
Like playing the devil's advocate game here, like I understand the idea of like when you're starting a new kind of game and you want to make it to where new people can play and pick it up easy, making the game easier is a way to do that. But when you simplify stuff to the state that they did in Unite Team Q4, you can make the simplest things just stupid and unfair. And it felt like when you were playing 8 months of this format, you only had 2 options: sack with Kagero or play OTT. And what was interesting for all the people that didn't want to do that was they hated Vanguard for 8 months because they didn't want to play anything else. Bringing in extra boosters for a second here, the technical boosters did nothing besides make spikes kind of cool, but a lot of people hate spikes just because of all the PTSD from that, so they refuse to play it always.
Aqua Force, DP, and Grand Blue like were kind of the first breath of fresh air, honestly. Like that second extra booster.
Yes,
and even those were like way weaker than OTTs.
Yeah. Like you still have to force yourself to play those versus playing anything else if you wanted to play competitively or just enjoy the game on a level that wasn't playing OTT or Kagero or whatever. My
issue with this set basically is that it showcased already fundamental issues that we would see in the future with designs in the V series itself. Because in this set alone, we saw that Bushiroad already broke a couple of things which didn't really make sense. We saw Nova Grappler out of the gate was pretty bad. It lost against OTT, which should have been its best matchup because Axel Stonk protect. But then also within set 1, they released Dragon Ink Waterfall, which was a Sentinel Restrict, which basically made protect markers invalid right at the get-go on set 1. Why? Like, I already made videos about why Waterfall wasn't good enough, and it was basically a terrible card. But that aside, that Waterfall isn't a strong card. The fact that they made a card like Waterfall in set 1 baffles me. It baffles me that they did that on set 1.
And if the idea was to like keep true to what these clans were originally, why is Kagero doing nothing like it used to? It never once was the guard restrict, let's kill people deck in 1 turn, check double crit, go, haha, my turn, GG, you know what I mean? Like it was, as a Kagero fan, I hated playing Waterfall. I love Waterfall. I think it's a cool card in terms of lore and stuff, but I just hated it. It didn't feel like Kagero to me. It felt like a war of just, let me do my thing first and then I win. And that was like never what G felt like to me, even though people said that's what G was. No, it wasn't. So, I feel yeah, I feel like this is our first candidate for D for so many reasons.
I would put it last in D, and I'm not gonna do that to every V set. Like
no. There are great V sets. There are great core. There are great.
No reason for them to make this set the way that it was. Like I understand, like it's a reboot of the very first set, but we're not 7 years in the past anymore. Like we came from G, we were experienced enough as players to have at least interesting skills and not like counter plus 1, here's 5k, get boosted, here's 5k, counter plus 1, retire unit. Like we're not little kids anymore. Like give us at least something that's interesting.
Yeah,
at least
especially if your goal is to like get new people, do you really want those to get bored instantly? Is like my big question mark there.
Exactly. That's the thing I want to bring up as well, because like when Vanguard came out, sure, that was like the level of skills at the time, but think of like the card games that were even out at the time in like 2010, 2011, like it was only like being explored further in certain games. But since Vanguard started until the reboot, we've had so many other card games get big and give people an impression of like, oh, this is how cool card games can be. And then you give people this and you're trying to get them into the game when they're playing like, I don't know, like Buddy Fight or Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or like Force of Will, like whatever. Like to anyone that's like played any other card games, this will seem stupid too. So it just felt questionable from start to finish.
To any Yu-Gi-Oh fans out there, it's like they made Legend of Blue Eyes in the middle of XZ's format. You know what I mean? Like they gave us the most bland game states ever in the middle of a game. Like I understand it's a reboot. It's technically a new game. You have to act like it is, but give us the respect of the Vanguard players. Like you could have made 4 starter decks of the 4 core clans, and that would have been the way to introduce new players. Play that for format for like a week or two.
Yeah.
Like they're doing now, giving us all 5, you know what I mean? And then we get the set.
These decks felt like trial decks. They felt literally like trial decks.
Yes.
In full power.
Q4 is literally I normal summon La Jin. Ha! Trap hole.
Exactly. Yeah. So as much, and we're gonna get to it. Like I said, there's good V series sets. Some pretty soon, actually.
Absolutely.
But this is not one of them. It is a straight up D, worst set probably ever in Vanguard. There might be one worse than this one. Talk about it later though. For other reasons though. For only core set. Semantics. AL4. This is Eric's. AL4. This is interesting. I have one. I wonder if we're going to talk about this one thing that I think is pretty cool about this set, but we'll talk about it in a minute.
For me personally, AL4 was a game changer. Like this is where at least standard finally a little bit kicked off because we got multiple clans. Finally, Oracle think they got a matchup against Zambaku because it could fight against it. And Shadows and the Dark Regulars at Pale Moon were nice. Personally, I was really fan of Pale Moon. The Golden Beast Tamer was a really fun deck.
Very fun deck.
In my honest opinion, could definitely beat Oracle Think Tank if you had the right pieces in your hand and you could actually do something against the clan. But besides that, this set also introduced a lot of key components like Nemain, Alice, Trapezes. These were standard good cards, premium good cards. And of course, this set birthed NLK, or at least it gave the NLK card to premium, which was insane. I think it wasn't really relevant at this time, but a couple of months later, it was immediately relevant.
Instantly.
Okay,
instantly. And NLK Enigma Assassin was stupid. It was just stupid.
So this set, like it finally gave standard at least multiple clans to work with. There were finally good, interesting matchup against each other. It wasn't really, I use my normal counter plus 1, summon something. No, I actually had some intricate combos with Golden Beast Tamer. You had decisions with Zambaku. At least DI had some interesting things with the rewrite, and there was finally something going on. And at least it also had some really good things for premium. I think this was actually a pretty good set for standard in the V series because it had good interactions for both standard and premium. Of course, it wasn't the most amazing set, as still Oracle Thinking was one of the best decks and not everything could beat against it. But this at least gave us more things, which the previous extra boosters couldn't do.
So
Here's
to me,
thing.
the thing
okay.
was this format was still you play OTT, then you play its counter Mura, or you play Shadows. Like
Yes.
that was basically a 3-deck format. And
Yeah.
standard wise, like it wasn't mega exciting yet, but it was way better already. Like
was better.
I didn't want to shoot my brain out anymore.
You could
as
have
much
fun playing
as-
Vanguard because there was
like,
more.
you
There was
had
just more
cool
things you could
cards.
do and still find victory. Yeah, it was nice.
It made Luard properly like good again because of the main and the grade 2
yeah.
gaming with Maka Karon that you got out of it.
Pretty-
You got NLK that was good. It didn't really do much for Pilmoon in that regard.
Wasn't
But yeah,
Alice
I mean,
really good?
which one?
Alice?
Alice?
Wasn't that really important for
Alice was like really good, but
A bit later.
Pilmoon couldn't shine because there was someone who we've touched upon a little bit. But so the problem was Pilmoon needed to stride. And you see, if you want to stride,
Oh yeah. And okay,
you want to stride. NLK was a bit of a problem.
yeah. But so honestly, like NLK premium format was, some would say toxic. I would say there was a lot of like interesting interaction there, and deck building was
Yeah.
insane.
It's like your most
But
explored format in the game.
Yes, it's the format that I've probably played the most.
Right. Yeah. It was so dynamic, even though there was like clearly a best deck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the big problem with it was that like if you are just a regular player and you sit in front of someone for the first time, maybe this is your first premium game and you're like, oh, I'm gonna get to stride.
Yeah.
And then it's me.
And then it's
and I just go like yellow bolt, tap, soul charge. Okay, you're grade 2. Okay, loop, you're dead. Like I understand that you're like, this fucking sucks.
This is like the premium, like, this was where the premium sucks mentality really came about, Yeah. So a thing I want to mention, besides this being like the first ever actual premium set that also was a standard set, is it did something.
Everything else did like change premium though. That's a pretty
for
important
sure.
one.
Yeah,
Like,
this was the first one.
Spike said.
Oh, you mean extra boosters? You mean? Yeah. Spikes was basically for
Spike
premium.
said OTT geese, blasters.
Yeah.
Grand
Oh, blasters
Blue,
were huge. Yeah.
Like they did, but this was like the first one that shook up premium like
Exactly.
insanely.
And it was a core set that did it too. Yeah. And then the thing that I want to mention about this that I loved about this set was it was the first set that really showed off that the decks in Vanguard aren't pigeonholed into what gift marker they are. So Murakumo is an Excel deck, but the way you kind of played it when it came out in this set was more of a grindy, advantage-based.
It wasn't aggressive, yeah.
It wasn't really that aggressive. It was a combo deck, and because you can't really draw cards in it, it was interesting to kind of have this idea of like you set up this big play, you gain advantage over your opponent, and you basically grind them out of the game playing an Excel deck, and that extra attack added to your ability to kind of kill them, which is nice. But it wasn't, I played things...
Design.
Like that was really cool. And so a thing that I hate about gift markers in particular is that it feels like people have this idea that when you play a protect deck, you're playing control. When you're playing an Excel deck, you're playing rush. When you're playing force, you're just like, do whatever I want because everything happens anyway. I don't think that's true. And I think this was the first set that actually showed that doesn't have to be true, which is nice. That's a positive, I think.
Agree that this goes into A somewhere?
I agree already. Yeah, for 100%. AL4 goes in A, yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't put it like super high, but somewhere in A is what it
was a good breath of fresh air, and it was kind of our saving grace for premium for standard specifically, and then it gave some cool aspects to premium, and I feel like overall it was a positive thing on the game.
I'd say it's in front of the Lambros set. I feel
that's what
somewhere
set 2. Yeah. Oh, definitely. I don't think it's definitely below set 1 for me for the original set 1.
Yes.
And 17, I think.
Iconic wise.
Yeah, I think it can go back and forth honestly between 17 and 4, but we'll leave it there.
Yeah, somewhere in between there.
Yeah. So overall, I do like that set. Moving on to the next one, Miyagi Academy, set 3 for V Series. One of probably my favorite ones, actually, because I'm a big fan of Narukami. I like the introduction of Nubatama here. It didn't feel too broken. It felt like a nice way to bring back the clan in this new era of Vanguard. It was super fun. I think the continuation of OTT was interesting as well. We got some fun stuff that was like interesting, I guess. I don't even know how else to say it besides that. And I know I like this set because of Tectonic Drill and all that fun stuff that Narukami got, but I'm not sure where it actually stands. So, like, what do you guys think?
I have two things with this set, what maybe Solemn and DifferentFight will also agree with. This set had one positive and one potential negative, which set the precedent for the future. One thing that came out this set, which we saw really before, were the start of budget builds, because you had Witches with Coco, we had Garmor that came out, which were really good signs. But the the biggest worst sign that came out of this set is that we saw the precedent of decks that relied on multiple VRs, with Ezel that need both VRs and Alfred that also needed both VRs. And this really showcased that at some point decks would get pretty expensive because we needed multiple older VRs, like 8 to 12 copies, and that wasn't really a good start here. So that's
That was a
where
fear, yeah.
This was when V series like got expensive. Like before that, it was like dirt cheap compared to like the end of G era to actually play the most competitive decks, I think.
So while budget decks are a good thing, it's also set the precedent for a more expensive deck. So that's an interesting
Yes.
dynamic that this set created.
Right.
This also set the precedent of multi-marker creation. Like kind of ultra rare collection already did that with Zerakiel, I want to say.
Zerakiel, yeah.
Like Raven-haired Ezel showed like, oh, we're gonna do this some more, and so this was like the first. I mean, I guess NLK did it as well, but like I don't know. I felt like Raven-haired Ezel was a very clear way to say like we're gonna give you
solidified that
reliable.
point.
Yeah, exactly. Like reliable extra marker creation, and that might become an issue. Overall, I think this set is like
pretty
not
tame.
very exciting because like Pentagonal Magus was like, okay. Alfred
Right.
was like,
Which was funny because the community was like exploding their mind over this card. Like, oh,
Yeah,
it's crazy,
exactly.
crazy,
You're like,
crazy,
Alfred's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So like,
It's a B set.
yeah, like it's got some good stuff. It feels pretty average, and I think average is going to be a pretty big thing for most other V sets as we get to them. But I feel like the points of like it just added to all the stuff we had earlier, like ultra rare collection, answer of truth, all those extra booster things, which again aren't part of this list, but it does matter in terms of understanding the context of this set when it came out. I think it's pretty average. I think it's actually so average. It's like the bottom of B for me.
Yes.
Other than just
I agree.
Narukami coming out and being like a cool deck on release, pretty much.
Premium wise, it also like Alfred was okay. Ezel became much better,
Extremely,
and Tetra Magus was really good in OTT, and that was it.
Mhm.
Beyond that,
Tetra was cool. Tetra was a
Yeah.
cool card. So yeah, I think bottom of B just makes sense. Moving on to
All right, Solemn.
VBTO4, Vilus Deleter. Solemn, you're up.
Okay, so that's mine.
Yes, sir.
VBTO4 Vilus Deleter. I didn't. I
had
was
to,
very bored with this set in particular, but we'll go for it. So we have our Shadow Paladin Gust Blaster Dragon. I was like, why did you make this? Because like Phantom Blaster Dragon already kind of bored me, and then Gust Blaster was just more of the same, I want to say.
Mhm.
So Gust Blaster was just kind of. I think a lot of people in the community also didn't like it because it didn't guard restrict. I
Nope.
think. I think
Yeah.
there was
Yeah.
something like
Biggest
that. People were like,
issue.
it doesn't guard restrict. It sucks. Like that wasn't the reason for me. It was more so that it just like wasn't. It didn't do much. Then Zangeki was like, oh, Zambaku is still insane. We'll give you something that makes it slightly better.
Mhm.
But speaking of insane, we'll get to that. Gradle, the leader, was like, oh, okay, this makes your trial deck better. Dantarian was a joke. End of stage was a joke. Yeah, I mean,
the other
you
VRs were bad, but the other foils were pretty alright.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, the
So
triple-
Blackwing Swordbreaker was insane.
Yeah.
Shirayuki was unfair,
Unbelievable.
ridiculousness. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this set because like it just feels very vanilla. It has a few very insane triple Rs and lower rarity cards, but its VRs all felt like all right, they're here. But I guess that's like kind of a good thing because it wasn't power creeping hard or anything like that either, except for in its lower rarity slots. So
Yeah.
personally, this is a B for me, or maybe even a C.
So here's like the full C for you right here. This set was so met in terms of value that they had to create a new rarity in the already rarity spammed V series to make people want to actually buy the cards in this set. What was it called? Like a deletion rare or something? I don't even remember.
Yeah, DR.
Delete
Two
R.
rare. Deletion is rare and S deletion rare. So
S
we had
deletion
an
rare.
extra rarity
yeah.
for the VR and an extra rarity for the triple.
Yeah,
Rs.
they had to shove so much just like weird value stuff in here to make people even want to buy it. That it's so met to me. I think it's like either bottom of C or like middle of C for me.
The only thing that I liked about this set was when you go to a sneak, somebody opens up the pack and they open up the special SDR pack, and literally, if you watch them from afar, their face becomes yellow because of the light that's shining in their face.
It's yeah. Bling,
I
bling's
like
cool.
that rarity though. Like I have
it's a
those
beautiful
Swordbreakers
rarity,
in
yeah.
my Luard. They're really cool.
Mhm.
I've
But
seen them
beyond
before.
that, I would put them in C probably.
Yeah.
Even,
For
like
me, it's low C as well. Like for me, it's like it's very few relevant cards. Like mostly just like as we said, Shirayuki and like Swordbreaker. Everything else was pretty whatever, and not a lot of the stuff like ever came back. Like there's Danset's Anarch in this, which was like used in Hyuga later, like the common grade 3 that you like call to give
Oh.
everything 5k.
yeah.
But like so like we really have to like kind of like nitpick and find good things in this.
Mhm.
So overall, I think it's pretty bad.
Misdirection, if you like Pale Moon Loop.
I think the biggest letdown from this set was that this was the introduction of Link, Joker, and Viera, and everybody was like, "Is it lock? Is it lock? Is it lock?" And we basically got this bind and delete mechanic, so everybody was like, "Meh."
Oh, also in terms of
Songster
premium,
did
this
it.
introduced the Songster loop, which is
Mm.
fuck
And Given, right? Given was also important for premium, if I'm not.
no, it was hyped up, but then it didn't do much.
Right.
basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think Low
Yeah.
C is just it's meh. Like
Yeah.
that's the only description I ever give this set ever in terms of everything else. It's just meh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now,
All right.
Aerial
So I
Steed
think-
Liberation.
I think
Oh,
I'm
boy.
on.
Yeah. This is you, Chris. BT
It's kind of
BT5.
poetic.
I personally like this set a lot. Aerial Sea Liberation was interesting because it came out at like this sort of like part 2 of the like, because this was like, but finally we're like getting more of the like Miyagi Academy was like the sort of high school arc start, but this one felt like we were actually exploring like new deck types and stuff.
Yeah.
So that felt more exciting. It's like, and basically every card was good in one way or another, and this was also our like worlds format, like the regionals or like shop challenge format basically. And like we basically had Ganslot, which was really unique design that I always wish they would explore more. Like they had to basically bend the rules a little bit to make this become a deck that could function, and I like that quite a lot. Like Platina Azel came out, which was amazing in both formats at the time. Tsukuyomi, which was amazing in both formats. Jamio Congo, which didn't do too much in standard, but in premium had to get a restrictionless follow-up because of its release.
I still
then-
hate this card with a passion.
It's so stupid. It is
I know
a
why.
dumb
I know why.
card.
Gauntlet Buster to me was like because like I like Narukami in V series a lot too. It was also cool that we're like skipping over Melody here. This was right after Melody, and
Yes.
so it was really a breath of fresh air compared to Melody.
Also,
where like the only deck that could really stand up to it was like Narukami, and that was kind of it.
I think we should talk
And
about too.
then-
I think that this was the first core set that had the Gift 2 released, correct? Because set 4 wasn't. Set 4 was
yeah,
Gift
yeah,
1. This is the
That's
first
right.
core set that had Gift 2. So Excel 2, Protect 2, Force 2, all that fun stuff. Melody came out was the first set that actually had that stuff and abused it. But this is so the way they designed the gift for these cards were way different, I think, compared to other ones.
Yeah. I personally like this set a lot. Like I was also living in Japan briefly for this, so I got to go to a lot of locals, and it felt like a healthy meta. But healthy in the sense that anything that released after Melody was good and pretty viable.
And that's
Um,
better than just Melody being good, right? Yeah.
Like, for me, this was a healthy format for the game. Very fresh designs. They managed to retrain Tsukuyomi in a way that felt respectful to what it used to be. And
Yes.
I don't know. Overall, I felt really good about this set. This was probably
the
one of my
only
favorite
thing-
series sets.
I agree, because like I like a lot of these cards. Also in premium, quite a lot of them were good. But the only thing we do have to note is that all of these VRs mostly creeped out what came before, because they had to,
Yeah.
because of Melody.
They
They
had
had
to
to. They had
because
to.
of Melody.
Again, it's
They did.
the set 14 thing. It's not this set's fault that power creep had to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So where GBT14 is the victim of Stargate, I feel this set is somewhat the victim of Melody in a
Yeah.
weird way.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
I would agree with that sentiment.
I like this set too. I don't think it deserves quite yet to be A tier. Because I think there's better sets than this in B series. Like we'll get to one. Well, better is a weird word, but
It's maybe bottom of A for me, or like top of B.
exactly. Yeah, top of
Yeah,
B.
I
I think
agree.
is more than is more
I
than
think
deserved.
AL4 was a better sign, I want to say, from like
Exactly. Yeah.
You mean the previous AL4 or the AL4 that comes next to this?
the previous AL4
previous
was like
AL4.
a better sign of look, we're changing it somewhat, whereas this one is just like it's cool, but it's not like the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I
would agree.
feel you.
Top of B just makes sense. All right. Moving on to set 6, Phantasmal Steed something. To Eric.
Iteration.
Phantasmal Steed Restoration, BET06 or VBT06. Okay, so yeah, this is a set that happened.
Talk about power creep, all right?
Like, I only have to say Mordred, Lukier, and Hyuga. We're basically done here.
Oh my God.
And Rufus, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
mean-
kind of as well.
Kind
Rufus
of.
was pretty important. Because that's
Like-
like after the Steel had come out. So for premium, it was
Yeah, for premium it
huge.
was huge, but in standard wise, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Premium was.
it was okay. It was getting tops here and there.
Yeah.
Like,
Honda,
we-
I think, top with it.
Everybody knows what this set created. It created Mordred and it created the Axel meta. Like with Lukier and Hyuga, it started what was going to happen with every set afterwards, where there were insane Axel decks coming every single time. So yeah, this set was pretty ridiculous. But at the same time, this set also, like, my issue what I have with Mordred is that it felt at the beginning like, oh, here we have Ganslot. This is really unique. We have something with Blaster Blade. And here's Mordred. It does the exact same, but then with Blaster Dark. Like, give me something more unique, man.
This was the start of that problem.
And then that's where Mordred clones started too. Like this was
Mordred
like
clones.
a pattern that like Bushiroad just fell into of like, let's design everything to be kind of like Mordred in flavor. And it was just
And it's
wild.
also here I want to say where power creep was like, I feel like this starts the ridiculous strain.
Yes.
I have fond memories of these decks. Like,
me too.
This format
this was
in particular.
probably the moment where I hated the standard the least for the first time. Where I was like,
Yes,
oh, Mordred, I'm
remember
having
that.
fun. Yeah. Like, I messaged you about it.
that.
Like, I'm having fun with Mordred. I'm having somewhat fun with Lukier. I'm having fun with Brewfuzz. I was like, okay, cool. But it was also like absolute insanity in comparison to what came before.
This is when Vanguard EX came out, so we had like this like finally like a virtual way to play the game, and at the time it was like basically a tool to test for worlds and for regionals, and so that was also like a really nice thing that like leaves a nice memory. But overall, it was like crazy power creep. The decks were cool, both for standard and premium, but it definitely started out a chain of like immense power creep.
Yeah, and
also this set introduced also one thing that's even worse than what I mentioned in the Miyagi Academy set, where we had older set with older VR, and then, oh, here's a new update to the VR. You need them both now, so you need to get it.
And there's two
VRs. Yeah, you have two VRs in one clan. You need them both. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Have fun. And then you had like old triple rares that started getting bought out and became just ridiculously expensive, even though they weren't that expensive when they first came out. Like this was like the first time the main became a problem to get, I think, for people.
This is something I forgot to mention earlier as well, is that like we somewhere throughout the original series, I think it was like towards, honestly, in G, it was when we got into G that they stopped making useless commons. Like until G, basically we had a bunch of useless commons that nobody ever used, and then it felt like from G onwards they started making like even the commons had like fringe uses, or at least were good in a budget deck or something.
Or they were stand triggers, they were broken.
I mean, you have Urwatar, TikTok worker.
You know,
so like I feel like that trend continued, and in V series they did pretty well with it too. But I agree that this set also had quite a few of those kind of whatever ones.
Yeah, so I feel like
all of the Shadow Paladin rares,
literally, like anything that wasn't AL4 Shadow Paladin, or you never played it, pretty much. Great ones.
This set is that it basically created the Nightmare Doll budget deck, which I really enjoyed. But that's about.
Yeah, again,
like
that's
that
more of
was-
those like good things of budget, but still bad thing with how expensive the top end of decks were at this time as well. So this feels like an average set to me.
I want to put it higher, but that's just me.
I want to put it higher too.
Like
I feel like this set had
like
more
higher
of an
in A
impact.
or better than Aerial Steed.
Higher than
has-
Ariel's.
Like this
Ariel's team.
defined the new era for V basically, because this is the start of the new power creep. So and it also set the precedent for how we played the games at the point. Like what someone
you're
said,
right. Yeah.
also became a bit more interesting with the check choices. Also, the way how you played out your plays were also a bit more thoughtful than Unga Boonga swing go.
Right.
Yes,
so
exactly.
you guys are right. I'll put it in A. Where like bottom or middle of A? Like better than AL4, I should ask. Or no?
Worse than AL4 because of the creep, I want to say.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
but like better than like Demonic Lord or the GB booster set 2, I think.
But like the amount of times I said Unga Boonga in my videos halved around this set.
Yeah,
halved. It wasn't.
probably.
It wasn't gone. It was halved. Then I think Anger Blader came out after this, right?
What,
Yeah.
A little bit after this,
Yeah. So I'll put it below GBT2. Okay. Next one.
Oh boy! Oh my god! this set.
GBT7 Infinity Cradle. Probably one of my favorite eras of the anime. The Remind series. Super fun. Very nostalgic. A very interesting kind of. I love prequel stuff personally in terms of
Nice way
storytelling.
to tie everything up.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but this first set was interesting to me because we got like the birth of Astral Poets, I think was in this, right? And then we got God Hand was in this, or was he in the extra booster? No, he's in this.
God Hand was in this.
Which is a very talk about Unga Bunga. That deck is so high roll. It's crazy fun, but it's stupid. In terms of meta, I don't remember this set doing anything besides giving us Nubatama, which is cool. Token generation, fun, dynamic gameplay. We had
it did nothing.
It did nothing.
Yeah, I'm trying my best to find something for this, but other than God Hand being dumb, I can't think of anything.
Eric has something.
Yeah, I will only say one thing about this set.
Mhm.
Making videos about these goddamn decks and trying to make people excited about them is the hardest thing ever because they all do jack shit.
That
Like,
was me for
so-
so much of these series.
It's so hard, you know, for me to kind of say more about this set. It wasn't bad. Like the support was cool, but it wasn't compared to Phantasmal. It was nothing, right? In
But at
terms
the
of
same time,
power.
I also have to say to the community, please don't think that God Hand Dragon is gonna break the game. Please do not
Yeah.
think that that's the game. Like,
Right.
oh my god.
It was fun.
It was
I
also
recall
the thing with God Hand though was that we didn't actually know how much other support it would get, and the question was
True.
none.
Yeah.
So like
that's it.
yeah, it was like God Hand, and you had like the 2 stacky boys, I guess, and then like
Power up guys, and that was it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
feel like this is an automatic C, maybe even top of D. I
would put it in. I would put it in D.
I think
Yeah,
OG
it's
Clash of
decent.
Dragons was better, but how do we feel about it? I think it's better than Unite Team Q4. So
Yes. A little
Yes,
bit.
but so the one thing I do have to say is that this did introduce in premium the 16 stand Valkyrian loop. And at the
Mm.
time, WCC was actually like testing this hardcore to try and solve this.
Really?
mhm.
Yeah, we jokingly called it Farming Simulator, and we were considering using it to qualify Worlds.
One of my teammates actually built it too as like a fun deck in premium, and then I remember like I was like, okay, I'll play my fun deck in premium too, and then I lost it. I was like, what the fuck? Why is nobody talking about this?
Oh, I think that kind of like we want to talk about too in premium in a second is like all these sets around V Series time gave birth to like some really fun tier 2 premium decks, which are just like
Yes,
outrageously
that's
exciting and
But so,
incredibly
like,
fun. But they couldn't compete with the tier 1.
Yeah, I agree. And the Valkyrian deck, like in premium, the issue was that we couldn't get its consistency high enough, and Ezel existed. So
And
if
Ezel
Ezel like
existed.
rolled high enough, it just like blew you up. So we still ended up going with Ezel, but it was something we considered.
Mhm.
Now, as a vendor, like at this time, I was also running Claret cards. I have to say, the way I profited off this set was it came with these promo packs. And there were like
Mhm.
promos that broke the game, like Meomaru.
Yep.
And so literally how we profited of this set was, oh, we have some exclusive promos. Okay, let's go. That was the only way, because these garbage ass cards just barely sold. Like we did sell out eventually, but it took so long.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Infinity Cradle, probably one of the worst in just terms of like what it did for the game, one of the worst V Series sets.
Like the best how you can describe this set is like we have Q4, which were the most dumbed down decks we could ever have. Then we have this set, which were a bit more complex with interesting things, but most of them were half complete.
Yeah,
They're still
They were
missing some
unfinished.
pieces.
They needed extra boosters afterwards to
Like,
finish them in some regard.
Ergodu's idea, like what was that deck?
Yeah, and speaking of
Yeah.
Q4, remember when I said like how Q4 format felt like 8 months? Well, we're about to get into another format basically that took forever to get. Like I don't know what the actual amount of time was, but how long was it before we got a new core set that wasn't Infinity Cradle? It felt like everything was either an extra booster or clan booster or something. Just like it was all
was all
extra
extra.
boosters for like a year, right? Like it was so long for all of basically the Rewind series.
Almost a year.
But
Yeah,
you also
so
had COVID slowing it down. which is
exactly.
pretty-
That was in terms of distribution, but I'm talking about like design, like before a new core set came out for the game, and it was completely unrelated to pretty much everything else afterwards.
It's a shame we don't have Next Stage in this because that of all V Series was a really cool set actually. Next Stage was like before we went into VBT08 and like this like that was the yet another new wave of power creep. Next Stage felt like it was the nice in between, and like it felt more similar to the other extra boosters that came before it, and like the team like the Vanquisher Claret Revon booster also
Divine
I
Dragon.
really like that one.
Yeah, that's one of the best. It came out with some really expensive cards, but it was a great set for the game in terms of just awesome cards that come out in it. But
Yeah.
the thing that I want to talk about really quick is you're right. I had to do a double take when I made this. It was like, Next Stage isn't a core booster set. I was like, that was such an important set when it came out for us. But I'm like, it's not a core set. Doesn't count. Not on this list.
Yeah, these series were just extra
It's
boosters
funny,
now.
you know, once we do the follow-up with extra boosters, we can talk shit on a lot of G things, and we can praise
That's
some
so,
more.
you know what I
Praise
mean?
these
Like,
series, yeah.
like
Yeah.
like
It's
core.
like a complete shit.
It's gonna be bottom tier for
100%.
sure. But anyway, Silver Dust Blaze, that is Solemn. Take it away, friend. Go ahead.
All right, so this is a power creep incarnate. This is because of that one of the best-selling sets was for Claret cards. at least, like,
Despite
we
Coco
sold
being
out
a
of
thing.
this.
Despite
Yeah,
Coco.
despite COVID, like
And no
it-
tournaments ever happening. This was one of the best ones ever.
Yes,
funny that
it
they
brought
all-
like Messiah which people love, Overlord TX, which people love,
OTT
Blade
came
Master,
back.
you still had people, Susano, Grand Gallop. I actually had fun in this format with Susano as well,
Yep.
which again, like my praise for standard is pretty rare, but like so when it happens, you
I
better
remember this too.
Like this is when budget decks became good.
Well,
You know, like this is when budget decks became as power creep as normal decks, right? So Blade Master was like a super cheap deck, and it was crazy strong in the meta, I think, for a long
and
time.
then the cards
Actually,
became super expensive. Remember?
and then the cards became expensive. Yeah, exactly.
Expensive.
Even though it was budget, yeah, that's the problem. If budget decks are good, then they're not budget anymore now, are they?
Yeah. But yeah, this set, like, it was so strong. Like, it was another step up in terms of strength. Like, things before it couldn't keep up much. Like, maybe you could argue that next stage was still solid even in this little era, but beyond that, like, this destroyed everything. It has some big fan favorites. I think this is overall a strong set from a design perspective, in the sense that it's like a lot of iconic units people wanted back, but it still has like the power creep issue.
I want to add one thing to that.
Yeah,
it is a lot of important, like, favorite units that came back, but this is where I started to feel that, like, I had such great memories with a lot of these like G era boss units that got dumbed down so hard that it left the kind of like a foul taste for me. Like,
yes,
especially with like.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a hot take.
Like, it was such a cool technical deck, and you turn it into attack with this, self-lock it, attack with this, self-lock it, attack with Vanguard, unlock stuff, swing, swing. Like, it was the most like one-sided. Like, my opponent can't really say anything about this deck, and like Overlord of the Cross was basically the same. Like, Grand Gallop was boring. I love Brad Black, for example, because it like patched up DP, but it didn't really do anything too fresh. It was a grade 3 searcher and a power up to the front row. Susano was like the only like sort of innovative-ish card design because of Amaterasu, I guess.
Yes, because of Amaterasu, yeah.
That was it.
Like,
I think the reason why a lot of G era players also started to have what you experienced with the bad taste in your mouth about how dumbed down it was, is that a lot of the decks at the end of G relied on their G guards. G guards were so important for their game plan, their tactics, and their combo plays. And because standard just didn't have any equivalent to that, like, everything had to be in the battle phase or your main phase. And then you get this situation where, oh, the Cross, it can restand 3 times. It wins or dies here. Blade Master, we get another copy, swing twice. Okay, Link Joker, luck. Okay, we're done. And yeah.
This might be a hot take.
Another important one there is that, like, if you're playing Messiah in G, you're not just doing a Mordred turn. You're not doing swing, swing, Vanguard, swing, swing. Like, Messiah in G is, oh, let me think about these 20 steps I need to take to do my attack.
Exactly. It was such a fun deck. Oh,
I played Messiahs before I played Chaos. Facts. But a cool thing too. Sorry, not a cool thing, but a hot take that might be like, I think we already mentioned it, but like literally, Sedate Messiah is Link Joker Mordred. That's all it is. Yeah. And this was like the birth of like this design choice that I didn't like in these series, which was that everything is now the same thing. Everything is now the same deck, but just in a different clan that has some different things. Like, the uniqueness of clans kind of went away. And if that is a thing that we're going to do, we may as well just get rid of clans and have nations instead. That's it.
And look where we are.
And look where we are. But hopefully they don't make everything the same.
I will say, Susano was fun.
Susano was great. I enjoyed playing that.
I love the deck. I love Susano's gameplay, and I think a lot of people have been sleeping over that deck.
It was good.
Yeah. Bad, not good. Like, dude, the deck is really good, and also, more importantly, fun. It's really fun to play.
Really,
like how you stacked, and like for your opponent's turn and your turn, and then you were like, wait, do I need my drive check like being better here, or do I need a defensive next turn? And like there was a lot of like orders in which you could stack differently that really differentiated someone who practiced that deck and didn't. And that's what I really liked about that deck. And that's like,
let me add one more negative, which is that it was this set where they brought in the promos that should have been in the set to begin with.
Oh, yeah, like, that is when they did that Kagura one. Like oh my god, yes, order stuff too. Oh, wait, when did orders come out?
Channels here, because like I've been very positive, and then you just go, wait, let me say one more thing.
I keep the negativity out of my channel, and then I spread it everywhere.
I'm just like
my streams are just me ranting all the time.
Like like let's be real. That's all. Like we'll find however we feel. Our feelings are our feelings. Doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. They're just the facts of how we feel. That's it. So how do we feel about Silverdust Blaze? I feel like it's not meh because it did crazy stuff. But it is in the terms of what it did for the game. It was basically like when stuff became not fun. So I guess we can't give it too much problems for that. Like it was the birth.
I guess.
I would say lower B because of the fact that this set really sold about, okay, V is going to be power creep. We're basically, this is where we're going to end off. This is literally your Bushiroad set. This is the grave where I'm going to dig myself into. Like,
right.
There was no coming back after this.
I will say, though, there was a lot of hype for this set. Like, people wanted it really badly. And that was huge. That was so important for Coco Times to keep the game alive. So I feel like this set did a good job of keeping the game alive and going. It just didn't have good long-term impacts, as we're going to see in a second. And also, this was the point where, in English specifically, we got a set every single month. So it felt like, even though we had formats, they didn't feel special and didn't matter too much for too long. But, you know, that's
also with no events, you couldn't remember what the best decks were.
Exactly. You know? Like we're referring to Japanese tournaments when we're saying stuff was meta. We're not talking about English tournaments.
Because I was still testing.
And testing, because like we can still have fun and play the game, but we just can't do it at the level that we maybe would have wanted to. So yeah.
Also, wasn't this right after Premium Collection where everybody was like,
yep, exactly, like literally right after, yeah. Exactly, right after. Which again, if we were doing extra boosters, we have a lot to say about Premium Collections, I'm sure, but again, not part of this. This is Chris's turn for VP209.
Yes. Okay, VP209, Butterfly the Moonlight, probably one of my favorite sets of V again. I actually really, really like this one because while, you know, it was again, like, I guess we can say a victim of the power creep, you know, but Butterfly the Moonlight felt like it had that power creep, but at least it explored it in a nice way. Like, every deck felt like it wasn't just like Unga Bunga Swing, like, you know, 5 attacks, whether you're forced.
Shahara.
Yeah. I know
was more dread, but beyond that,
yeah.
Beyond Shara, right? Like, Yasuya was actually like a technical Axel deck where like your resolution of effects actually really mattered. Like, Harry had, like, at least especially in Premium, it feels like it spawned a lot of Pale Moon builds as well. Like, whether you focused on Harry or whether you focused on Nightmare Dolls. I don't know how much you agree, Solemn, but like, I've played at least against a good number of different Pale Moon variants strictly coming out of this set, right?
To me, this set is a premium set.
Yes.
No, I agree.
Agreed.
But so on top of that, for me, like, I also like that they still managed to like slide in a bit of like legacy support to stuff like Luke here. And to me, like, I've already talked about like how much I love Night Rose from V Series. Like, Night Rose to me finally was like a boss unit that didn't do everything, you know, for you, like how, I don't know, like Alter Ego did or the Cross did. It was a deck that like it sort of made the rest of your deck function. And, you know, it was the supporting pieces and everything else that you built your, you know, that you put in your deck list that made that happen. And you had the choice of playstyles, even in just standard, whether you want to farm more cards, whether you want to push more aggressively early game. Like, this wasn't really a thing in too many standard decks at the time. And just playing Night Rose, to me, like, it brought back, because I was like doing a lot of Zero stuff at this time as well, because it was like popping off like crazy. And like, then I picked up Night Rose and I was like, this is so fun, even in just standard. Like, I still haven't explored the deck in premium yet, even though I have all the parts and I want to sit down with it, but I have like a lot of like 5 other premium decks I'm playtesting right now. But it's like, I love this set so much purely because of that. And as you said, like, it both felt like a great standard set and also a great premium set. Like, I really love this one. And keep in mind, this was around like the MLB deck time for us in English too.
Right. So I completely agree. I think Night Rose is amazing. The only bad thing about this set, in my opinion, is even though I love my maximum edge boys, I think Dark Regulars was a bit of a problem in this. It was the continuation of the problem we said, but the other stuff, it was perfectly, I think, acceptable for how to continue the game's design in a way that was balanced and healthy, and it gave me a nice thing fun.
Strong.
I feel like the community didn't realize that.
Right. Well, again, we couldn't really.
Like, the West realized it, just Japan didn't. That's
right.
Japan played
they didn't play Navigator.
Yeah, but the West played Navigator, and if you played Nitros correctly and went just Navigator from turn 1, you just destroyed people when you rode 3. Like, you went, Skull Dragon 4 times? Yeah, get fucked. This is a Megiddo turn.
Like literally, So while Night Rose was stupid, it wasn't immediately a problem. It was more of a discovered thing later on.
Yes. For me, this set brought 2 really interesting things which I really, really liked, and they proceeded in the rest of the VR till the end. And I hope they're going to do this for overdress as well. Is one, they really start to do that they finally can do something unique with the markers, like stacking those markers at least brought unique to the markers themselves, because it's not more create more axle markers and create more multi-tags or something like this. You build up towards a actual win condition. But the other really nice thing that I really liked about this set is that they really start printing budget decks completely out of the set every single set onwards, because this was the set where they brought 7 Cs, and then every single set afterwards got at least 1 and sometimes even 4 budget builds completely out of the build for everybody, which was a really nice touch because things were starting to get more expensive as V Series was starting to get to its end. So that's what I really liked about this particular set in general, on top of the extra plays that they gave to Standard as well as in Premium.
I would
A.
put this high A or maybe even S if you want.
I kind of want to put it below
I would agree.
set 16, I think. I don't think S, because I don't think it defines the game enough to deserve to be S, if that makes sense, for like what the future of the game is, because the next set basically invalidates a lot of what set 9 was, I think, for certain things, you know what I mean? And so
yeah, but you still need to consider though, like don't forget the other V sets we're now gonna cover. Like this might just be the best V set. Do you really want not a single V set in S?
Yeah, I want to let this be the one V set.
The one V set in S, you think? You know what? With that point in mind, I think you are correct. I forgot about this being the
of course, not
last.
talking about extra boosters.
Right.
I
think Answer of Truth was
the
awesome.
The two sets that introduced Night Rose are both holding it down in the bottom of S.
like honestly, yeah, I think Night Rose. Yeah, you know what? Grand Blue stands unite. I can agree. Bottom of S.
Yep.
All right, Eric.
All right.
You got probably the most important one to talk about.
No. Steven, we're gonna switch. I'm gonna do 11.
No. You're up, bro. You can be as simple as just say where it goes, and then we'll take it from there. Just say where it goes.
The reason why I want to do 11 is because I have a really nice quote for 11. So
fine.
I will do
set 10. You can do 11.
Okay.
Okay. Phantom Dragon, Ion or Eon, however you say it. I don't know where to put this set, guys. I'm gonna be.
It has Luard.
It has Luard. That's great, isn't it? Oh my god.
Are you trying to tell me it has other clans but shadows?
What? So
this is a clan booster, right? Why are we discussing it today?
Of all the sets that came out on this list, this is probably the only one that I think actually broke the game and ruined the market and ruined the way we thought about how to play, and was truly disgusting in terms of power. Like there's power creep, and then there's this, and then I don't know what to call this.
Had 3 other clans.
Like literally, like who cares what else came out? This is Luard. I honestly don't know what to do with this. Should it be its own tier? Should I just call the tier Luard and be like, there it is?
Luard and friends.
Like literally, I don't know what.
You put it at the
very bottom.
Bottom.
Because the cards are ridiculously stupid, but what it did for the game was pretty terrible.
The issue that I have with this set is that this set had so many awesome ideas, but they just threw it all in the garbage because the power level of Luard. Like the deck of Luard, what it was and how it worked was really interesting and really fun because you had all these intricate plays and you could do all these interesting things, but because it was so overpowered, it didn't matter because I would just win everything. And then in that same set, we had Gridora, which was really interesting with this new token or marker mechanic, which was pretty interesting and new and revolutionary. But nobody cares.
No one cared at all.
And Rising Nova was basically the standard version of Gear Groovy, but nobody gave a shit because Luard was in the set. Like, that's what I really hate about this set, because it had so many awesome ideas, so many interesting concepts which it could explore, but because Luard was here and they gave him the power that it has, it was basically a fuck set.
It's the worst selling set in Vanguard history.
It's also like, I want to add more to it. This was where people finally, like, Zazan was the first like point where people were like, are they even testing this game? And then this was the set where like does the research and development does the R&D department exist right now? Are they just all on leave? Like, are y'all on holiday? Like, what's going on?
How'd they forget Bende was 5K? How'd they forget that?
Like it's just, oh my god, like this it every possible way there's like a billion negatives you can find. I think, you know, this like shattered trust for like vendors, this shattered trust for players, this shattered trust for like
shops.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't a shop in Japan say they're no longer carrying Vanguard because of this product?
A shop chain, right? So a big
chain. Yeah.
And one of the chain stores basically said so. So some people like to overblow that and said like, oh yeah, a bunch of shops stopped selling.
No, it was one.
One store.
Okay.
Chain.
Yeah.
So, but even then, it's like this set, like the Luard. It's a shame because Luard is like from G was such a cool design. It was such a like. It's just like fundamentally what Luard represented was just this cool toolbox deck that could, you know, kind of like work around the mechanics at the time and, you know, get to do some things for free if it worked towards that. Premium Collection 2019 solidified that with the Murfessa Stride, in my opinion, especially. And then this took all of that, attempted to recreate it, and just like fell flat on its face because it like oversaw like something blowing up in the background, you know? And it's just like it's such a disappointment. Like I think there's nothing else we can really say. It was just a big disappointment.
I want to be some level of positive, but for what this did for the game, even though Coco was a thing, this was probably one of the worst things that happened for the game, I think, ever.
Yeah.
So it's got to be the bottom of D, maybe even worse. But yeah. All right, Eric.
Okay, so now we get VBT 11, Storm of the Blue Cavalry. If we go back to the beginning of the VR, we said Q4 was a set where every deck was super boring. You know what's even worse than boring decks? Incomplete decks. This set didn't even give you an incomplete deck for any of the clans. You bought everything, it wasn't done, because this set had the worst promo issue that I ever have seen. And because of that, I would honestly say that this is one of the worst sets. Like, there were a lot of awesome things here and awesome designs with Isabel and Shiranui and Lambros to some extent. But because they had the audacity to create a set for every single clan in this set to just, here's a deck, but you missed 1 or 2 cards and you need those cards to actually make the deck function. And to get them, here's some promos. Oh, in the West, not sure whenever you get them, we see it then. But
maybe for a BCS. Maybe. Yeah. Like, so yeah, I'm more angry about this set than Luard because of that. Like, Luard, okay, the decks were complete and Luard broke the game to some extent, but this is literally going to a shop. Oh, you want to buy my product? Here, buy this. But to actually use it, you need to have this. But maybe you can get it, maybe you don't. We have to wait and see. That's how
like
this
felt to me. Meme, right? It's like the EA meme where like they used to sell you like 50% of the game and the rest is DLC.
Like, actually.
I also have a personal gripe with this set because I at one point literally sold most of my Aqua Force and then kept just enough in case that this set excited me that I could still like properly build it out. And so I waited and I was like, okay, Lambros or Tavas, maybe they'll bring back some of that G, you know, all those interactions you could do. And then they announced that Lambros is a grade 4. And I'm like, oh no, please, no. And it's just every single reveal, I just got more sad and sad and sad.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you know, I always loved Tavas and they kind of just destroyed that for me. Maybe in the same way that Messiah got ruined for Chris. In V Messiah, like V Tavas made me so sad. Yeah. I was very happy with Isabel though.
Isabel was a saving grace for me. That was I was so happy with how they did my girl. I was so happy, but it's doesn't like. I think Eric hit a really good point. Like, this set was just a disappointment, but for a completely different reason. Of that, unless you liked Isabel, you couldn't do anything, and even then, you're still missing a very key piece to make the deck actually stupid.
For me, the positive I want to give it is that this basically created arguably the best budget deck in Blouse. Like, essentially, this is the one budget deck that, like, I was watching the one channel that like they reflect on the history, but that channel is made by some of Japan's top players, and they were like they did a video talking about the current meta because they had events going on, and then they were saying how like they were discussing Blouse, and they were like, wow, like this deck actually, like, oddly enough, feels like a threat even to like the other meta decks at that time, or like even going into VBT 12. And I really like that they finally managed to make like a budget deck good. And also for premium, I've been playing premium Blouse a lot lately. That deck is so fun. Like, it's tier 2 at best, like honestly probably even like tier 3, but it is ridiculously fun. And like, as you said, Isabel had like multiple builds, which is also like what I wanted for a long time, like VRs that actually have multiple builds around them. And like,
Big Belly
Isabel
Turbo
had, like,
was fun too.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things about this set that were great. So I think that we need to talk about here is, where should it go? I think it should go at the top of D. It's a disappointment,
I give it that,
but it's not necessarily the worst disappointment we've seen. And there's many outside factors other than what was in this set that caused it to be bad.
And another thing that was really awesome about this set, again with the budget builds, but also not really budget, is the way that they supported Maelstrom and changed the way how the deck worked without actually changing the boss unit. You still have the same boss unit, but the deck was completely different thanks to the new support, which was really nice though.
It was really cool.
Really
way better than Tavas.
Yeah.
I would put it in C.
In C.
It doesn't bore me as much as Violet's Deleter. Like,
so higher than Violet's Deleter, you mean? Should I switch the two? I'll switch the two. I'll put Violet's Deleter at the top of D, and I'll put this in the bottom of C.
Yeah.
I think that will be fine.
I think that's fair. Moving on to the final set of Vanguard to talk about, VBT 12. We're going to all talk about this one. We're just going to get going and talk about the discussion of this set and figure out where it goes. That's my. I don't even know what to say about this set. Like the only thing I like about this is that Angel Feather's best deck now. That's cool.
I mean, Solemn, you can go.
Okay, fine. So, first of all, I'm a Gabriel simp, so it's not like I'm mad that it's good.
No,
Be aware of
no.
that. Well, Gurgit was obviously like ridiculous, and the fact that they in their stream went like, "Oh yeah, it was a design oversight." Like, how is Percival Gurgit, which is in the same set, design oversight?
He's holding the SPs. I love it.
Oh, very nice. But so Gurgit was obviously a disaster. Like maybe not on the same par as Luard, but maybe very close. I want to say. So Gurgit was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Gabriel is a one-shot OTK deck. However.
Yo, pop the link down below.
Like Genesis Eosanus Dragon, that thing was really cool.
Really
like
cool.
it was finally defensive creep in Vanguard. I was like, wow.
At the very end.
At the very
too bad.
Literally.
Yeah, it's too bad that it's the end, right?
Yeah.
Like what would happen next?
Fenrir was a massive mistake with Gleipnir in premium, not in standard. I don't know if it's good in standard, but Gleipnir
It's
pretty good.
It performs to standard because I literally hear nobody about it.
Nobody
Like,
talks about it.
I'm personally a fan of Fenrir because Fenrir is literally demonic tutor the deck, and I'm all for that.
Yep.
Yes.
It's another 5-attack deck, so it's nothing like super fantastic, but it does what it does well, and I think it's just like a slept on good high tier 2 deck, basically. Like I've played against it quite a lot because
It also has no CL, which is like a cool budget option.
Really good budget option, actually. Yeah, especially when we get that promo for Angel Feather, it'll be better. if we get it.
I think it's in clan selection. I think.
Is it? All right then.
It is.
Confirmed. All right. So yeah, I feel like this set is just a victim of all of V series. If we're talking about victims right now, but it's also like just the epitome of power creep in the sense that, guess what? Luard's restricted now. Play Gurgit.
I have to say yes and no, because in the same set we can see things like Gabriel and Gurgit, but then also we see Full Bronto, which was balanced around his own fact that he couldn't get the extra marker, so they knew what the hell they were doing. Right. And then we have Eones's Dragon, which was the defensive power creep. So this set for me is a 50-50 because at the same time they had no choice. But then also, look, they actually knew what the fuck they were doing because they could do it. So
maybe I'm just so biased against Gurgit and the scars I had from playing with friends on area for it. Maybe I'm just like against it. But I do love Gabriel, and so that's a big selling point for me. So I can be convinced to put this higher.
This set has both some of my favorites from V series, but also like it doesn't have my least favorites. For me, Luard is by far. And so I don't think I personally would not put this in D.
No. I think it's pretty 50-50. I think it's
like, as I said, they had the perfect cards, but also the worst cards. But because they did something right, it means it can never be in D.
Exactly.
They did everything wrong.
Yeah, I think this set literally is like the perfect 50-50. Like it just came out weird, and like there's so many good things, but also a lot of bad things too. So I feel like it's pretty 50-50 in terms of I think it averages out for what it does. And because it is the last set of V series, it's interesting to see how they kind of learned some of their lessons, but also ignored those lessons as well at the same time. So maybe it's them being like, don't worry, we can do stuff right. Trust us for overdress is what I think this siren song of a set is.
We can do stuff right. Just
clan selection to me was that sign that we can.
Clan selection's dope. Clan selection is so dope.
What if Vanquisher, Fenrir, and Eos Nessus Dragon were developed by the new team, but Gabriel Gurgit was already made by your team?
What are the odds? Dude, could you imagine?
You know when like they take on like a company takes on new guys, but they have to like teach them the ways by like adding them into the workforce. So that was like, all right. So it's like the new guys will design this part, we'll continue at this part, but it turns out people already at the company designed the bad parts. So
yeah, I think this is a guaranteed B, just a purely average set, like to end off V series, I guess, because what else can we say other than bad stuff about it at that point, right? Like the best it could be is average, right? I think is the way I should put it.
It's hard to call it average because it has really good and really bad.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
I don't want to put it at the
bottom of A.
Are you really gonna put this better than Ariel Steed?
Ariel Steed, that's interesting.
Yeah, true.
I think it's got to be either middle B or is it worse than Silverdust Blaze?
No.
So put it under GBT01 maybe?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's right.
I think under GBT01.
I think that's correct. Now, That's it, guys. That's everything. Before we wrap the video up, are there any things you see that's wrong with this tier list? the movie. Vanguard tier list, the movie. Enjoy. Leave a like if you guys made it this far, and comment down below. Apocra.
If you watch this at 2x speed,
dude, literally. I think we're pretty solid here. I don't think there's anything that needs to be moved down. There's nothing that needs to be moved down. I don't think. I think everything is pretty fairly placed. The only thing I think.
So one big issue I see right now is that there are certain old sets that we put there because of their iconic nature, but if you put them from look at them from a gameplay perspective, they suck dicks. Like BT04, like the Shadow introduction, compared to all these other great sets like G and even the Moonlight set, that set is like ugh. But we put it there because of at the time their iconic nature. So I think we shouldn't move them, but we should give that little bit of information that you shouldn't compare them directly.
And I think I do want to mention too is that over half of our sets are above B. So over half of Vanguard sets are above average. Do we feel like that's the case for Vanguard as a whole, or do we feel like we may have gone wrong? I think that's true. I think it's true.
Because we have 24 clans, at least we had 24 clans.
Keyword
because
there.
we had that means that multiple sets are probably good because they're spread out over all these different clans. Like if we had only 6 nations, what I would assume is that, yes, we hope that overdress is better, but if we compare all the sets together, it's probably going to be more spread equally because every set is going to support the same thing. So it's easier to say this set is better than that set is worse than this because of this. And in old Vanguard, it's harder to say because, this was really good set for these 3 clans. But then 4 sets later, this was instrumental for Spike Brothers, and you get in that situation.
And then and then you bring in the community, like how we reacted to those hype sets that are coming out, the new mechanics, the new era, new players coming in, what this set did for all those people. That's the whole point of this. Is look at everything about these sets and judge them. And I think on the whole, every Vanguard set is better than average. Sorry, not most Vanguard sets are better than average, which I think
if
is
they
correct.
weren't, we wouldn't be Vanguard
players. If they weren't, we wouldn't be Vanguard players. Exactly, I agree. So I think this is true, besides maybe a bunch of movements among the tier lists, amongst the levels themselves, there's not that much of a difference between anything. So yeah, this is a pretty good looking list. Let's go ahead and wrap up everything. All right, boys and girls, there it is. Vanguard the movie is now over. There's some final thoughts here, reflecting on how we think we judge things and overall what the past 10 years of Vanguard product has given us. Like we said, on the whole, above average, really good. We're really pleased. We think Vanguard is an excellently designed game, so different from so many other card games. I don't know about anyone else here, but I've played so many card games in my time, and Vanguard is the one I always keep coming back to. I just love the design so much, and I'm really looking forward to overdress, especially now that I've reflected on so many positives and negatives of the Vanguard design process. So how do we all feel about everything that's about to happen, everything we just did, and just everything that is Vanguard at this point, honestly?
Yeah.
Just hype.
Actually.
I'm personally really excited by the fact that we're actually going to go into unknown territory, even for us experienced players, because we're getting nations, we have new mechanics, and we just don't know what actually is going to happen, which is actually pretty exciting because in the past, we always had the idea, okay, we can expect this, and this is going to probably be this flow of things. But now it's almost as if it's a complete new game. So that's actually pretty exciting for me personally.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you can still tie that to Vanguard's history, because we still have our legacy formats. Even if everything is super new, you will still be able to force it into your history. Whether
it is still, hey, 3,000 years is not that much time. It's still Vanguard, boys and girls. Don't you worry.
Someone is gonna be that grandpa player back in my day.
Back in my day, New Batama was the only Dragon Empire clan that came out.
Yeah, you mean Grand Blue?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm really hyped for what's going forward, and also not just talking about what's going forward, because I think the game is gonna probably grow. I feel like it's gonna grow a lot because of the way that they're designing it, and because of who's in charge of the game now as well. I just feel really good about the future, and hopefully I don't eat these words in a year's time or anything.
Yeah, we never know. We don't know everything, but we're hopeful. Yeah. We're very hopeful, and we're excited.
We're very hopeful. We're very positive about everything. And I was even looking at now the discussion we had, just looking at the tier list image myself, I'm damn, this looks it was
good.
A really nice way to relate everything and wrap up everything over the last 10 years. So I'm just hyped for the next, Bushiroad said they're planning for the next decade. So I mean, I'm going to be there. I'll be 35 listening to them planning for yet another decade.
Yo, dude, if I make it to 32 years old playing Vanguard still, I'll be happy with my life. I'll tell you what.
Hey kids, back in my day, we had G Guardians.
Let me tell you a fun story about Chaos Breaker. All those fun things. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for today's video or movie. Like we've said time and time again, thank you so much for watching. Huge shout out to all these wonderful people here. You thought it was a long video. Trust me, it was a long recording. All we did was talk about how much we love Vanguard, and it was an absolute blast. Be sure to check them all out. Links down below if you haven't already. And if you want to give this tier list a try for yourself, because it was just a really fun experience to help bring in the new era of Vanguard, I'll leave a link down below. Make it for yourself. And tweet at us if you want to share your opinions, or just me and tell me how wrong I am all the time for not adding anything into this discussion. But I enjoyed myself either way. Any last words before we head out, boys?
If anyone tweets out a wrong tier list, I will attack you.
Tear him down.
You'll have a video made about you.
Personal video by Solemn.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much again for watching. Thank you to these guys for hanging around. As always, I've been your true champion, Steven. Please be sure to work hard, rest easy, and live well. And I will see you all next time. Peace.